Hello, this is Whispers in the Rain. Welcome to tonight's story time, a collection of real stories pulled straight from the depths of Reddit. Dim the lights. Let the rain drown out the world beyond your walls. And as you listen, remember, these are the stories people swear are true. Comment below where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. You've scrolled far enough. Now close your eyes and let the whispers begin. Story title: I found a hidden room in my grandfather's attic. Reddit username: O kosattica reluctant archivist. When my grandfather passed away, I inherited his old farmhouse in Vermont. It was the kind of place that creaked with every step, groaned with every gust of wind, and whispered in the night like it had secrets to tell. I moved in temporarily, just to sort his things and maybe fix the place up, but I never expected to find what I did in the attic. The attic was always locked. Grandpa used to say it was just full of junk he never got around to throwing out. The key was hidden behind a loose brick in the fireplace. I found it by accident. Actually, I knocked the brick loose trying to clean the hearth. Behind it was an old brass skeleton key. I recognized it from childhood, but never thought much of it. I waited until the next morning to go up. Something about the night made the idea feel wrong. The stairs groaned under my weight as I climbed, flashlight in hand, even though sunlight poured through the small window at the far end. The air grew colder the higher I went, unnaturally cold. The door at the top didn't look like the rest of the house. It was older, rough-hewn wood, bound in iron, like something you'd find in a dungeon, not a farmhouse. The key fit perfectly and turned with a reluctant click. The hinges screamed as the door opened. Dust hung in the air like fog, thick enough to taste. The attic was vast, cluttered with boxes, furniture, and old tools, all blanketed in gray. But at the far end, something didn't belong. The wall looked newer, out of place. Cleaner wood, and in the center of it, another door. One I had never seen before. I don't know what compelled me, but I crossed the attic and stood before that second door. It didn't match anything else in the house. It was smooth, painted a dull gray, and had a small iron handle without a lock. I touched it, and my fingers tingled like they'd brushed static electricity. The doorknob was ice cold, even colder than the attic air. I hesitated, heart pounding, then pulled it open. Behind it was darkness. Not just the absence of light, something denser, thicker, like light didn't want to go inside. I shined my flashlight in, but the beam barely pierced it. Still, I stepped through. The floor beneath my feet changed from wood to stone. I heard the door creak shut behind me, but when I turned, it was gone. Only a smooth, unbroken wall remained where I'd come from. The air smelled of damp earth, mildew, and something metallic like blood. I moved forward slowly, the flashlight flickering. The beam danced across stone walls lined with old bookshelves, all of them sagging under the weight of leather-bound tomes. Some books looked warped, wet, or burned. One shelf held nothing but jars, each containing what looked like cloudy liquid and small shapes I didn't dare examine too closely. Farther in, I found a desk. On it lay an open journal and a cracked fountain pen. The ink was fresh. The journal was written in my grandfather's handwriting. I recognized the loops and slashes of his penmanship immediately. I flipped to the last page. The words chilled me. They watched from below. Do not open the floor. Do not let them speak. A chill crawled up my spine. I looked down and realized the stones beneath the desk were arranged in a perfect square, distinct from the rest of the floor. A trapdoor. I dropped to my knees and examined the trapdoor closely. There was no handle, no hinge, just a faint seam outlining the square. I knocked on it. Hollow. Something shifted below, like a slow scrape or rustle. I immediately regretted touching it. I backed away, heart thudding, and picked up the journal again. Most of the pages were filled with ramblings. Mentions of them, of voices whispering at night, of dreams that bled into waking life. The further I read, the more erratic the writing became. Ink blots, torn corners, whole pages blacked out. One passage stood out. They feed on secrets, on silence. They grew stronger every year I ignored them. Another, I buried the room once. It came back. It always comes back. Suddenly, I heard it. A whisper. Not a voice I could identify, but something like words spoken through a mouth full of water. I spun around, flashlight shaking. The air was thicker now, like breathing through damp cloth. I tried to retrace my steps, but the room had shifted. The bookshelves weren't where I left them. The jars on the shelf were gone. In their place were mirrors, small, handheld, all facing outward. My reflection stared back at me a dozen times. Only, in some of them, I wasn't alone. In one, I saw a tall, pale shape standing behind me. Its limbs were too long, its head tilted unnaturally to one side. I whipped around. Nothing. But the whispering grew louder. "Don't let them speak," I whispered aloud, gripping the journal like a shield. I stumbled away from the mirrors, desperate to find the wall I entered through. Panic rose in my chest like bile. I knew I needed to get out, but the room had changed. It wasn't a room anymore. It was a maze. Each corridor twisted in unnatural ways, some turning back on themselves, others leading to dead ends that hadn't existed moments before. I marked the walls with soot from a burnt page in the journal, but the marks faded within minutes, like the room was healing itself. The whispers didn't stop. They got bolder. Sometimes they sounded like my grandfather's voice, pleading. Other times, like my own, echoing ahead of me, begging for help. But I hadn't spoken. I try not to look into the mirrors, but they were everywhere now, mounted, floating, even embedded in the stone itself. In one, I saw myself grinning with bloody teeth. In another, I saw the trapdoor again. Open this time, darkness spilling out of it like smoke. I began to run. My flashlight blinked and died, plunging everything into murky gray. Somehow I could still see, just enough to move forward. That's when I heard the footsteps. Not mine. Heavy, wet. They didn't follow, they led, drawing me in deeper. Every time I tried to turn back, I found myself at a dead end. The maze wanted me to go forward. It was hurting me. Eventually, I reached a chamber, perfectly round, the walls lined with more of those mirrors. And in the center, the trapdoor, the same one. But I hadn't turned around. I'd been moving forward the whole time. Something was coming through. The seams glowed faintly, the stone trembling as if something beneath was breathing. The journal pages rustled in my pocket without wind. I remember my grandfather's warning, "Don't let them speak." But the air was already humming, like the beginning of a word about to be spoken. The trapdoor pulsed. I backed away slowly, hard in my throat, and turned to flee, but there was someone blocking the exit. He was tall, thin, and swaying slightly, as though caught in a breeze that wasn't there. His eyes were open too wide, the whites glowing faintly in the dark. His skin looked damp, like he just crawled out of bog. But what stopped me cold was the smile. It stretched unnaturally, ear to ear, lips cracked and blackened at the edges. "I told you not to come here," he said, in my grandfather's voice. I froze, unable to move, my legs locked in place. "You're not him," I whispered. "No," the thing replied, "but I remember wearing him." It stepped forward, bare feet slapping wetly against the stone. "You brought the journal. That's good. That means you've already heard the first words. You've begun to understand." I gripped the book tightly, suddenly tempted to throw it down the trapdoor just to make all of it stop. But something told me it wouldn't matter. It wasn't the journal they were after. It was me. I ran. I didn't care that I didn't know where I was going. I bolted past the thing, its long arms swiping inches from my back. The maze shifted around me again, walls breathing, floors warping like melting wax. I kept running until I couldn't hear its footsteps anymore. Eventually, I collapsed against a wall, gasping. That's when I heard a new sound, a low, steady knocking. It was coming from inside the wall. Not behind it, inside. I pressed my ear against the stone. A voice, soft and broken, leaked through. "Don't let it open," it said. "Don't let it breathe." I stumbled back. The stone rippled like water where I'd touched it. Something pushed against the wall from the other side, making the stone bulge outward like stretched skin. I turned and ran again, the voice still whispering behind me. I don't know how long I wandered. Hours, maybe days. Time didn't feel real in that place. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I didn't even feel hunger or thirst anymore, just a constant, gnawing dread that settled into my bones like frost. Then I found a room again. The same chamber. The mirrors. The trapdoor. Like I'd never left. But this time it was open. There was no mistaking it. The trapdoor, once sealed tight and glowing faintly at the seams, now hung ajar. A thick, black fog rolled out of the opening, spilling across the floor like smoke from an ancient fire. It didn't rise. It slithered, hugging the ground, curling around the mirrors like fingers. Each one clouded as the fog touched it, distorting the reflections into vague, twitching silhouettes. I should have run. Every part of me screamed to. But I walked forward, pulled by something deeper than curiosity. Maybe it was the journal's influence. Maybe the maze had eroded my will. Or maybe the voice in my mind, soft and persistent, was no longer mine. I reached the edge of the trapdoor and peered inside. The fog was so thick I couldn't see the bottom. Only hear it, wet breathing like lungs filled with water and something else. And whispers, louder now, clearer. They said my name. I dropped the journal in shock, and the pages blew open violently, flapping against the stone like a bird in panic. The ink bled across the paper, forming new symbols, shapes I instinctively knew were words, even though they weren't in any language I recognized. I tried to look away, but they burned into my eyes. A mirror nearby cracked. In it, I saw my reflection watching me, unmoving. Only, its eyes were black, mouth sealed shut, blood oozing from the corners like it had tried to scream and failed. Something moved beneath the fog. A pale hand, long and jointless, slipped out from the opening and pressed itself on the floor. Then another. They clawed at the stone, dragging something massive toward the light. I stepped back, heart hammering. The whispers rose to a chorus, some pleading, others laughing, one sobbing. All of them were familiar. I looked at the journal one last time. The pages were now blank. Whatever knowledge had been there was spent, or consumed. The thing was halfway out. Its face was covered by a stitched leather mask, like someone had sewn it shut to keep it silent. But it trembled, as though trying to speak, and I knew if it did, I'd never be myself again. I turned and fled, but the walls were melting now, the stone dripping like wax under heat. Mirrors cracked and shattered as I ran, splintering my reflection into pieces. My breath came in ragged gasps. The maze was no longer even pretending to be navigable. It wanted me to see, to witness what was coming, to hear it. But I wouldn't listen. I covered my ears, screamed to drown the voices out, and stumbled into a hallway that looked familiar. It was faint, barely holding together, but I recognized the pattern in the stone. The exit. I sprinted toward it with everything I had left. Behind me, the whispers twisted into a single, guttural sound that didn't belong in this world. It pressed against my spine like cold breath. I hit the door hard and fell through it. And suddenly, I was back at the attic. I lay there on the attic floor, gasping, my clothes damp with sweat and dust. The air was still, silent, normal. The trapdoor was gone. The extra wall, too. Just dusty boxes, old furniture, and the morning sun peeking through the attic window like nothing had happened. But the journal, still clutched in my hand, was soaked, the pages warped and unreadable. It reeked of rot and something bitterly metallic. I stood slowly, legs trembling, and descended the stairs like a man waking from fever dream. Every step felt heavier than the last, like I was sinking back into gravity. I locked the attic door behind me and shoved a wardrobe in front of it for good measure. I didn't care if it looked ridiculous. The house was quiet again, but not empty. I could feel in the walls, like something was listening or waiting. I told myself I'd leave that night, burn the journal, sell the house, and never look back. But hours passed, and I couldn't make myself move. Every time I neared the front door, a whisper slithered into my mind. You opened it. You heard us. I tried to sleep that night, but dreams weren't safe anymore. I saw the trapdoor in everyone. I heard the voices, not whispering now, but shouting, screaming. 1,000 mouths in a lightless pit begging to be heard. When I woke, the journal was open again, even though I'd wrapped it in duct tape and stuffed it under the kitchen sink. New words had appeared, written in dark red. Next time, let it speak. That's when I noticed something else. In the hallway mirror near the bathroom, my reflection didn't quite move the same way I did. It lagged, just for a second, then caught up, like it had to remember how to mimic me. I smashed the mirror, but the next morning, another replaced it. And another. Now, I cover them all. But at night, I hear the faint sound of cracking glass. Sometimes I wake to find one uncovered, as if someone, or something, wants me to look. I'm not alone in the house. Some days I hear footsteps upstairs, even though the attic is locked and nailed shut. Other times, the scent of that fog seeps through the vents, metallic and cold. Once, I found a mirror propped against my bed, and in its reflection, the trapdoor was wide open again. I tried moving out. I packed my bags, got in the car, and drove 5 hours before realizing I was back in the driveway. I don't remember turning around. I've stopped trying. I spend most of my time in the living room now, surrounded by lights and noise, anything to drown out the silence. Because it's in the silence that I hear them again. The voices. They're patient. I know that now. They've waited a long time, and they'll wait longer if they must. But eventually, I'll listen. Eventually, I'll open the attic door again. I don't know how much longer I can resist. The whispers are clearer now. They don't just beg, they reason. They remind me of things I've forgotten, secrets I never told anyone. Sometimes, I catch myself standing at the attic stairs without knowing how I got there, the key already in my hand. One day, I'll open it again. I know I will. And when I do, I won't come back. Not really. If you find this note, burn it. Burn the house. Don't listen. Don't read the journal. And whatever you do, never, ever open the trapdoor. It only takes one word. Just one. It's already speaking through me. Story 2 title. My son has started talking to something in the walls. Reddit username. O Kosatica Holoparen. It started 3 weeks ago, just after my son turned 4. At first, I thought it was normal imaginary friend stuff. Kids that age talk to shadows and make up names for the breeze. But the way Ben talked to Whimsy felt off. He would crouch near the vent in his bedroom and whisper, "Okay, Whimsy, I won't tell." Then he'd giggle or nod like he was being given instructions. I chalked it up to cartoons or too much tablet time. But one night, I heard him crying through the baby monitor. When I went to check on him, he was pressed flat against the vent, whispering, "Please don't be mad." I didn't mean to. The next day, I asked him about it. "Whimsy says you're not supposed to listen," he said. "He only talks when the house is quiet." That made my stomach twist. I didn't like the idea of him talking to something in the walls. So I removed the vent cover. Just dust and a metal duct that led into darkness. Nothing inside. Still, I sealed it shut with tape and told Ben Whimsy had to go away for a while. He didn't throw a tantrum. He just stared at the sealed vent and said, "You made him angry." That night, the noises started. They weren't the usual creaks or groans of an old house. These were scratches, rhythmic, deliberate. Sometimes they stopped when I entered the room, other times they got louder. At 3:12 a.m., I woke to the sound of laughter coming from inside the wall. It wasn't Ben. I checked on him. He was asleep, tucked in tight, but the vent tape had been peeled away cleanly and laid on the carpet like someone had removed it with care. The vent was open. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I was convinced someone had broken into the house. I called the police. They walked through every room, every crawl space, even the attic. Nothing. No signs of forced entry. No footprints. Probably a rodent, the officer said. Or maybe your son peeled the tape himself. I didn't argue, but I knew that wasn't it. Ben had been fast asleep, and he was terrified. I tried to question him again over breakfast. "What does Whimsy say to you?" Ben looked up at me, eyes wide. "He says you won't believe me. That stopped me cold. Try me." He picked up a crayon and started drawing on the back of a cereal box. It was crude, of course. He's 4, but I recognized it. A long shape, too many arms, tiny mouths instead of eyes. "That's Whimsy," he whispered. "He lives in the dark between the walls. He's really flat, so he can move around easy." I stared at the drawing. "And what does he want?" Ben leaned in close and said, "He wants a door." That night, I heard tapping again. Not scratching, tapping. Like fingernails drumming on wood. It moved across the walls, as if pacing. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped into Ben's room. He was awake, sitting cross-legged on his bed, staring at the vent. "He's mad," Ben said quietly. You locked him out. He says he'll find another way. I ripped the vent out of the wall completely, half out of rage, half out of fear. There was nothing inside, just the dark ductwork. But I noticed something new, a piece of fabric wedged deep inside, too far for Ben to have put it there. I reached in with pliers and pulled out a torn scrap of denim. It was faded, frayed at the edge, and written on it, in ink, were the words, "Let him in." I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined that drawing Ben made. Too many arms, all reaching, pulling through the cracks in the drywall. By morning, I was ready to take Ben to a therapist. But when I went to get him from his bed, I found him sitting on the floor beside the open vent again. This time he was crying. He doesn't like you, he sobbed. He says you're keeping him away from his family. I kneeled down. What family? Ben wiped his nose with the sleeve of his pajama shirt. The other ones. The ones who came before us. He said they knew better. They fed him secrets. I didn't know what to say. I took him to daycare and sat in the car outside work for 30 minutes, just staring at my hands. I felt like I was losing my grip. When I got home that evening, the vent cover I'd removed was back on, screwed into the wall like it had never been touched. I didn't put the vent cover back. I was sure of that. But there was tight clean, not taped like before, but screwed into place like it had always belonged. I touched it gently. The metal was cold. Too cold. The rest of the room was warm from the morning sun, but the vent felt like it had been sitting in a freezer. I went to the garage, grabbed a screwdriver, and took it off again. This time, I examined everything more carefully. I used my phone's flashlight to peer deep into the duct. Nothing. Just shadows and a stale, sour smell like wet cloth. I decided to leave the vent off and keep Ben in my room for the night. That evening, I set up a baby monitor facing the vent. I didn't expect anything. Honestly, I just wanted peace of mind. But at 3:13 a.m., the monitor screen glitched. Just for a second. Then something moved across the lens. It was fast like a shadow, sliding sideways, impossibly flat. I sat up in bed, heart pounding. I didn't wake Ben. I didn't want to scare him. I replayed the footage the next day, frame by frame. There was one still where the shadow seemed to linger, stretched along the wall, its arms bent at wrong angles, fingers long enough to brush both the floor and ceiling. There were no eyes, just a mouth, impossibly wide and open, as if frozen mid-scream. I deleted the footage. That night, Ben wouldn't go near the vent. He's mad again, he whispered. He says you're spying. I held him close and said, there's nothing in the walls, just air and pipes. Ben didn't argue. He just muttered, that's what he wants you to think. The next day, I found something else in the duct. A marble. It was old, cloudy, with a red swirl in the center that looked disturbingly like an iris. When I rolled it in my palm, it felt warm, like it had been clutched tightly by something alive. I didn't show it to Ben. I flushed it. That night, the tapping changed. It became a knock. Slow, deliberate. 3 sharp raps that echoed across the drywall. Always at the same time. 3:13 a.m. The witching hour. I started recording the sound with my phone. No matter where I was in the house, the knock would come from the wall closest to me. Bathroom, kitchen, hallway. Always the same rhythm. Always at 3:13. Ben grew quieter. Pale, like he wasn't sleeping at all. When I asked if Whimsy still talked to him, he nodded and said, it doesn't need vents anymore. He found a new crack. I asked where. He pointed to the baseboard under his bed. I checked and found another marble, nestled in the shadows like it had been watching us all along. I didn't touch the second marble. I couldn't. I just stared at it, that cloudy red swirl burning in the dim light like it knew I was there. I grabbed Ben, and we slept in the guest room downstairs. I locked the bedroom door behind us, even though I knew locks didn't matter. Not if this thing could move through walls. The next day, I called an HVAC company. I told them I heard animals in the ductwork. When the tech arrived, he crawled through the attic, unscrewed vent covers, ran a camera down the main lines. After an hour, he looked at me with an expression I didn't like. Confused. Pale. There's something wrong with your layout, he said. I've done hundreds of these. Your ducts don't go where they're supposed to. What do you mean? There are chambers back there. Hollow spots in the walls that don't make sense. Dead ends that aren't on your floor plan. And they're deep. Too deep for this house. He showed me the feed. The camera passed through ducts that looked normal, then dipped into a space that wasn't. The metal walls widened, warped, then faded into rough concrete. After that, the signal cut out. Could be an old crawl space, he offered, but he didn't sound convinced. Might want to call someone else. A contractor, or I don't know, an exorcist. He laughed nervously. I didn't. That night, I woke up to the sound of Ben talking. I ran to the guest room. He was sitting on the floor, cross-legged in the dark, whispering to the wall. I heard one phrase before he noticed me. They said you were hollow, too. I yanked him away and flipped on the lights. Who said that? Whimsy. Ben just stared at me. Blank. Empty. He's inside now, he said softly. Not on the walls anymore. That was the moment I knew we couldn't stay. The next morning, I packed a bag and booked a hotel 2 towns over. I told Ben we were going on a little vacation. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. On our way out the door, I paused in the hallway mirror. Something in the reflection caught my eye. Movement behind the glass. But when I turned around, there was nothing. Still, the reflection remained different. The hallway behind me in the mirror was darker, stretched longer than it should be, and in the distance, standing the shadow part of the corridor, was a tall, thin figure with too many arms. I turned away and didn't look back. The hotel room felt safe at first. Sterile, bright, but at exactly 3:13 a.m., I heard it again. 3 knocks. This time, they came from inside the nightstand drawer. I opened it slowly, heart thudding. Inside was a single marble, identical to the others, and a piece of fabric, faded denim, with the same words inked into it. Let him in. I didn't scream. I wanted to, but some instinct deeper than fear told me not to. I closed the drawer slowly and stepped away, pulling Ben into the bed beside me. He was already awake, eyes open and blank. He followed us. He whispered, "Ben, we're safe now. We left the house. He doesn't live in the house. He lives in us." I didn't sleep the rest of the night. At sunrise, I took the marble and fabric and tossed them down a sewer grate outside the hotel. It didn't matter. When we came back from breakfast, the drawer was open again. The marble was back. This time, there were 2. We drove home that afternoon, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't stand the idea of being haunted somewhere that wasn't mine. At least at the house, I understood the rules barely. But at the hotel, everything was uncertain. I had no control. When we stepped into the foyer, it was colder than it should have been. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't speak. Ben clutched my hand and led me upstairs. His room had changed. Every wall was lined with drawings, hundreds of them, all made in crayon and graphite. They covered every surface like wallpaper. Some were of the figure, too tall, too thin, with blank holes for eyes and dozens of hands reaching from its sides. Some were vents, doors, cracks in walls. Others were just words written over and over in shaky, childish letters. "Let him in. Let him in. Let him in." I asked Ben when he did all of it. He said, "I didn't. Whimsy draws when I sleep." That night, I heard footsteps in the attic. Not scurrying, walking, deliberate. I didn't go up there. I locked the door and pushed a bookcase in front of it. At 3:13 a.m., the knocks came again, from the hallway wall. I stared at the drywall and saw it pulse just slightly, like something behind it was breathing. I pressed my ear to the surface and heard whispering, layered voices speaking in a language I didn't understand, but one voice came through clearly. It was mine, repeating something again and again. "You're already hollow. You're already hollow." The next morning, I noticed something missing. My reflection in the hallway mirror didn't blink when I did. It just stared. Later, I watched Ben walk by a full-length mirror in the bathroom. His reflection lingered a moment too long. Whatever whimsy was, it wasn't just speaking anymore. It was copying. I set up cameras again, this time hidden. I watched footage of myself pacing the hallway at night, entering rooms I don't remember visiting. Sometimes I just stood in front of the mirrors, mouth moving silently. Other times I walked right up to the vent, crouched and whispered into it, just like Ben used to. The scariest footage showed Ben standing over me while I slept. He bent down, opened my mouth with his small fingers, and whispered something into it. My eyes fluttered and I whispered something back. When I confronted him, he cried. I didn't want to. Whimsy says I have to practice. He says you need to learn to speak his name. What's his name, Ben? Ben didn't answer. But later that night, I woke to find it written on my bathroom mirror, carved in deep, jagged lines. The name carved into the mirror wasn't in any language I recognized, just a string of symbols. Curved, interlocking, etched with inhuman precision. Yet when I looked at them, I understood exactly what they meant. It wasn't like reading. It was like remembering. I covered the mirror with a towel and scrubbed the glass until my knuckles bled. But no matter what I did, the name wouldn't come off. Worse, I started to hear it. In my head, in my dreams, even in the water running through the pipes. Every sound began to echo those syllables. I couldn't unhear them. I started sleeping in the living room with all the lights on. Ben stayed by my side, quiet as ever. He didn't speak to Whimsy out loud anymore. He didn't need to. The house had changed again. Rooms felt smaller. Angles didn't line up. The hallway grew longer every day. Sometimes doors were missing in the morning and back by nightfall. I started marking the walls with chalk just to prove to myself I wasn't losing it. The marks vanished by morning, and the marbles, they kept coming. I'd find them in my shoes, under the couch cushions, even tucked inside the fridge behind the orange juice. Always the same cloudy glass, always the same red swirl. I collected them in a mason jar and sealed it tight, but the next day the jar was empty and the marbles were back in new places. Then, one night, I woke up to a sound that turned my blood cold. Laughter. Not from Ben, not from me, but from inside the walls. It wasn't childlike. It wasn't playful. It was ancient, hungry. I grabbed Ben, who was already awake, and bolted for the front door. But the handle wouldn't turn. No matter how hard I twisted, it wouldn't budge. The locks weren't engaged. It just wouldn't open. Ben didn't scream. He just whispered he locked it. He wanted to show you something. That's when the knocking started. Not the usual 3. This time, it came in waves. Dozens. From every wall in the house. The floor. The ceiling. It was like living inside a drum. The lights flickered and died. We stood in the dark, listening to the walls breathe. Then silence. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring. That suffocates. That presses against your chest until you feel like screaming just to prove you still exist. And then the voice returned. You know the name now. It said, not from the walls, but from everywhere at once. Speak it. Let me be whole. I clutched Ben tightly, but he pulled away. You have to, he said. It's the only way to stop the knocking. No, I said. We leave. We burn the house if we have to. Ben shook his head slowly. He's not in the house anymore. I opened my mouth to protest, but then I saw the hallway mirror glow faintly. The symbols I had scrubbed off had multiplied, covering the glass like cracks. In its reflection, I wasn't holding Ben. I was holding something else. Something taller. Something smiling. I dropped whatever was in my arms and stumbled back. It hit the floor with a sound that wasn't right, wet and hollow at the same time. When I blinked, it was Ben again. He looked up at me with wide eyes, tears forming at the corners. But I didn't move, because the mirror still showed something else. My reflection was no longer copying me. It stood upright while I crouched. Its mouth moved slowly, deliberately, forming the symbols scratched into the glass. My breath fogged in front of me, even though the house was warm. I felt something inside me shift, like a string being pulled taut. A connection. Don't say it, I told myself aloud. But the name echoed in my head like a drumbeat. Rhythmic. Inescapable. Every corner of the house whispered it. Even the plumbing. The refrigerator hum. The ticking of the clock. It all bent toward that impossible sound. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the hallway outside Ben's room with a hammer in my lap and a flashlight in my hand. I waited for 3:13 a.m., but nothing happened. No knocks. No whispers. Just silence. I should have been relieved, but instead it felt worse. Like the eye of a storm. When I checked on Ben, he was gone. The bed was still warm, the blanket folded back as if he had just stepped out. But no footprints. No signs of struggle. No sound. Just a single marble sitting on the pillow and a new message scratched into the wall above the headboard. He chose to listen. I searched every inch of the house. Closets. Crawl spaces. The attic. I ripped open drywall, tore out vents. Nothing, just silence and the overwhelming, suffocating sense that I was being watched. Then the hallway mirror began to hum. Not vibrate, hum. A low, thrumming sound that resonated in my teeth. I approached it slowly, raising the hammer. But instead of my reflection, I saw Ben. He stood in a room that wasn't mine. Dark, endless. Behind him, something writhed in the shadows. Taller than the ceiling. Eyes like marbles. Arms that never ended. He didn't look afraid. He looked empty. He mouthed something I couldn't hear. I pressed my palm against the glass. And for the first time, he pressed back. Cold skin met mine, separated only by the thin sheet of mirror. His eyes widened, and then his mouth moved again. Slower this time. I read his lips. Say it. I ran. I smashed the mirror. Glass rained down around me. The humming stopped, but the name didn't leave my head. It grew louder. Every hour. Every minute. Like it was learning how to speak through me. I called a priest. A medium. A scientist. They all left after 5 minutes in the house. One didn't even make it to the stairs. She turned pale, clutched her chest, and whispered, "It's not bound to this place. It's following you." Now, there are mirrors in every room, even ones I never bought. I destroy them, but they return. I haven't seen Ben since that night, but sometimes I hear him in the walls. Tapping, whispering, waiting. I haven't spoken the name yet, but I dream of it, and each morning I wake up with the taste of it on my tongue. Last night, I woke up standing in front of the hallway mirror. My lips were moving, but no sound came out. In the reflection, Ben was behind me, smiling. Only his eyes weren't his. They were red, swirling glass. I don't remember going back to bed, but when I woke up, there was a message on the bathroom wall, written in steam. "He's ready. Are you?" I can feel him inside me now, curling deeper each time I think the name. My voice isn't mine anymore. If you find this, burn the house, destroy the mirrors, bury the marbles. And if your child starts whispering into the walls, don't listen. Because once you do, you're hollow too. Story 3. The forest behind my cabin keeps rearranging itself. Reddit username, u/solitude echoes. I moved to the mountains last fall after my divorce. Bought a small cabin on the edge of a national forest, miles from the nearest neighbor. It was quiet, isolated, and peaceful. Exactly what I thought I needed. The first few months were uneventful. I spent my days chopping wood, hiking, and learning to cook for one. The nights were still, the air crisp and clean. I slept better than I had in years. Then I noticed something strange about the trees. At first, it was subtle. A path I'd cleared would vanish overnight, overgrown as if weeks had passed in hours. Or a cluster of rocks I used as a marker would be missing the next day. I thought it was animals, maybe bears or deer, disturbing things while I slept. But then the trees started moving, not bending or swaying, moving. One morning, I stepped out with my coffee and saw a pine tree standing in the middle of my gravel driveway. Not fallen, planted, roots and all. I've been using that driveway every day. There was no way I wouldn't have noticed a 20-foot pine suddenly sprouting there. I walked around it in silence, half expecting someone to jump out and yell prank. But I was alone. No tire tracks, no footprints, just a tree, perfectly still and freshly planted. That same night, I found another oddity. While brushing my teeth, I looked out the bathroom window and saw lights deeper in the woods. Small, flickering like lanterns. They moved slowly, weaving between the trees in strange patterns. I turned off the lights to get a better look, but the moment I did, the lanterns vanished. I chalked it up to a trick of the eyes. Maybe hunters, I thought, or hikers, but something didn't sit right. The next morning, the tree was gone. Not cut down, gone. No stump, no disturbed dirt, no broken branches. Just a smooth stretch of gravel like it had never been there. That was 2 weeks ago. Since then, it's gotten worse. The trails don't stay the same anymore. I'll hike one direction, mark trees with red ribbon like always, then turn around and find the ribbons gone, or worse, tied in unfamiliar shapes. A straight path might loop me back to my own back porch in minutes. Other times, I walk for hours and end up deeper in the forest than I ever intended, the sun dipping too low before I realize how lost I am. And the worst part? My compass doesn't work out there anymore. It spins lazily, no matter which way I turn. Last night, I heard a knock on my front door. When I opened it, no one was there. But on the doormat sat a small bundle of pine needles, tied together with red ribbon, the same kind I use for trail marking. Someone, or something, had been out there. I burned the bundle of pine needles. It felt like a ridiculous thing to do, but my instinct screamed for it. The second the flames touched the ribbon, it crackled like something alive. Thick black smoke curled up from the fire pit, heavier than it should have been. It didn't rise, it sank and slithered, curling toward the forest's edge before disappearing into the trees. I didn't sleep that night. At around 2 a.m., I heard the woods. Not just the creaking of trees or distant rustling of animals, something deeper, rhythmic, like breathing. A low inhale and exhale that stretched across the entire forest, as if the land itself were slumbering just beyond the tree line. I shut all the blinds, locked every door. The next morning, I found boot prints circling the cabin. They weren't mine. Too large, deep, like whoever left them was carrying something heavy or wasn't quite human. They started at the back of the cabin and made a perfect loop, stopping directly beneath my bedroom window. I followed them as far as I could into the woods. They vanished about 20 yards out. No signs of retreat, no scuffle. Just stopped, as if the person who made them had simply been swallowed by the earth. I hiked back to the house fast, feeling that awful pressure again, like I was being watched through the trees by something not entirely present. A shimmer behind the bark. A pause in the bird's song, too deliberate to ignore. Inside, things had shifted. Literally. The coffee table was now 6 inches to the left. One of the chairs in the dining room faced backward. The rug in the hallway was flipped over at the corners. Small changes, subtle enough to doubt, but I knew I hadn't left them that way. I spent the next day trying to rationalize it all. Stress, isolation, cabin fever, but none of that explained the changes outside. The trees are moving, not growing. I've started marking them at night with chalk, symbols, faces, arrows, but by morning the marks are either gone or changed into other things. Smiling mouths, closed eyes, once a perfect handprint too large to be mine. A week ago, I found a clearing that hadn't been there before. Perfect circle, flattened earth. All the trees surrounding it bent outward, away from the center like something had pushed them. In the middle was a stone pillar no taller than my knee. On it sat another bundle of pine needles, tied in red ribbon. I didn't touch it. The moment I stepped into the clearing, the air changed. It got heavy like trying to breathe through wet cloth. My ears started to ring, and I felt dizzy like something underneath me was spinning too fast. That's when I heard the whisper. Not a voice exactly, more like the memory of one. Female. Come. Go back. I stumbled out of the clearing, fell twice, scraped my hands. I didn't look back. I knew if I did, I'd see something I wasn't meant to. That night, the lights returned. Only this time, they weren't in the forest. They were circling my cabin. I killed the power to the cabin the moment I saw them. 5 lights moving in a perfect circle just beyond the windows. I crouched on the floor with a fire poker in one hand and a kitchen knife in the other, heart hammering. Through the slats of the window blinds, I could see flickers of soft yellow. Not like flashlight beams. These glowed steady, like lanterns floating at head height, drifting smoothly around the house with unnatural grace. They made no sound. Every instinct told me not to look directly at them, so I didn't. I kept low, watched the shadows moving on the walls instead. They danced like they were part of a ritual, slow, synchronized, deliberate. Eventually, the lights stopped. One by one, they blinked out. Then silence returned, but it wasn't comforting. It was dense, expectant. I waited until sunrise to move. When I finally opened the front door, there was a new bundle on the steps. Pine needles, but this time bound with black string instead of red. I picked it up against all sense. And inside was a folded piece of paper, damp with dew. There was no writing, just a drawn symbol. A circle with a jagged X running through it and tiny branches sprouting from the edges. It matched the chalk marks I'd found on trees days earlier, the ones that replaced my original symbols. Now I knew. I wasn't leaving marks to find my way. Something else was using them to find me. I burned the paper, then hiked to the edge of the nearest fire road to check for signal. My phone still didn't work out there, but I brought a disposable camera I'd kept in the drawer for emergencies. I snapped photos of the distorted trees, the rearranged trails, even the forest floor, which now looked bruised and torn in places, like it had been walked over by something massive and dragging limbs. Back at the cabin, I found claw marks on the back door. Long, deep gouges. 4 of them, evenly spaced. They hadn't been there that morning. That night, I tried to sleep with a shotgun across my lap. Around 3 a.m., I heard something tapping the windows. Not scratching, tapping. Knuckles. Talp, talp, talp. I held still, counted the sounds. 3 windows, 3 taps, then a pause, then again. On the 4th tap cycle, the glass cracked. A thin hairline fracture ran down the center like a jagged smile. I leapt up, heart racing, ready to fire, but when I reached the window, nothing was there, except a fog had rolled in thick and fast. I could barely see the porch. The air had that now familiar heaviness, that feeling like being underwater. And then I heard footsteps on the roof. Heavy, deliberate, pacing from one side to the other, circling slowly. Dust fell from the rafters. My flashlight flickered and died. The chimney moaned. The lights returned. This time, they didn't hover. They pressed against the windows, glowing brighter with each passing second. They wanted in, and something told me I wasn't supposed to stop them. I braced my back against the front door, shotgun on my lap, as the lights pressed against the windows like moths drawn to flame. But they weren't just glowing, they pulsed, like they were breathing. Inhale, exhale. Each pulse synced with the pounding in my chest, as if they were trying to align with my rhythm. Then the footsteps on the roof stopped. The silence that followed felt like something holding its breath. Every second dragged like molasses. I waited, muscles locked, eyes glued to the door. A soft creak echoed from the back of the cabin. Not from outside, from inside. I turned slowly, every hair on my arm standing up. The hallway stretched longer than it should have. I counted 5 doors. There were only supposed to be 3. I rose, flashlight trembling in my hand, and made my way toward the last door. It hadn't been there before. The wood looked old, older than the rest of the cabin, even though the building was decades old. The handle was rusted and cold to the touch. I didn't want to open it, but I did. Behind it was a staircase. It spiraled down into darkness far deeper than the house should allow. The air that drifted up was warm and damp, tinged with moss and something metallic. I should have closed it, boarded it shut, but something in me whispered go. I took 1 step, then another. I counted 20 steps before I saw the bottom. The staircase opened into a stone chamber carved from earth and root. Vines clung to the walls like veins. And in the center, sitting on a pedestal of twisted wood, was another pine needle bundle, this one wrapped in sinew. I didn't touch it. I backed out slowly, step by step, never turning my back on that thing. As soon as I reached the top, I slammed the door shut and shoved a bookcase in front of it. Then I heard scratching from the other side. Not claws, fingernails. That night, I stayed awake with every light on. But at 3:17 a.m., 4 minutes past the usual, every bulb burst. One by one, the cabin plunged into darkness, the glass crackling underfoot as I stumbled toward the window. Outside, the lights were gone, but something else had taken their place. Figures, tall, still, standing just beyond the tree line. I counted 7, but there could have been more. They didn't move. They didn't glow, but I could feel them, the same way you feel the weight of a thunderstorm before it breaks. And though I couldn't see their faces, I knew they were watching. In the morning, the forest had changed again. My woodpile was gone, all my trail markers erased, and on my front door, painted in ash, was the same symbol from before. A circle, a jagged X, and tiny branches. But this time, it was accompanied by a single word, written beneath it in pine tar. Soon, I packed that morning. I didn't care if I left food in the fridge or clothes in the closet. I threw my essentials into a duffel, grabbed my emergency satellite radio, and shoved my hunting knife into my boot. I was done pretending I could outlast whatever this was. But the road was gone. Not overgrown, gone. The gravel drive that had led from my front door down to the old forest access road now ended in dense, impassable trees. Pines that hadn't been there the day before. Trees too wide to have grown overnight. I hacked at one with an axe. The blade bounced off like it hit stone. I screamed. I cursed. I fired a round from the shotgun just to hear something break. Nothing did. Back inside, I tried the radio. Static. Dead. Even the emergency beacon wouldn't fire. I tried climbing to the roof for a better signal, but when I reached the attic, it wasn't mine anymore. The floor was dirt. The walls were bark. Roots hung like ropes from the ceiling. The cabin had begun to rot from the inside out. Or worse, it had never been a cabin to begin with. I backed down the ladder and sealed the attic hatch, nailing it shut. Every nail bent at first, like the house didn't want to be closed. That night, the whispers returned, this time inside the walls. I pressed my ear to the floorboards and heard voices repeating a single phrase in different tones, overlapping like a broken choir. Feed the shape. Feed the shape. I poured salt in a circle around my bed, lit every candle I had, read every protection chant I could remember from old survival books and half-remembered myths. At 3:13 a.m., I felt something step into the cabin. Not break in, not knock, just arrive. The air pressure dropped. The candles flared and went out. I was plunged into silence, so deep I heard my own heartbeat echo off the walls. And then came the footsteps. 1, 2, 3. The slow scrape of bare soles across wooden floorboards. Each step deliberate. Each pause between them too long, like it was listening to me panic. I held the shotgun to my chest and didn't breathe. The steps circled the bed. I saw nothing, but the boards creaked, dipped. Something heavy was there, breathing. Close enough to taste the rot on its breath. Then the whisper, no longer from the walls, but beside my ear. Soon, I screamed. I fired. The shotgun blast shattered the window and threw me back into the corner. When I looked up, the candles relit themselves, blue flame. Cold. The salt circle was gone. The floor was dirt again. The walls were vines. And there, in the center of the room, stood one of the figures. No face, just bark, bone, and antlers shaped like roots. It didn't move. It didn't have to. It had found me. I couldn't move. The figure in the room didn't speak, didn't blink, just stood there, as if it had been waiting for me all along. Its body creaked like strained wood with every small shift. The antlers twisted upward and scraped the ceiling, shedding dust and splinters. It smelled like wet earth and decay. But what paralyzed me most wasn't its appearance. It was the way the air bent around it, like gravity shifted in its presence. Like space didn't quite apply to it the same way. Then it raised an arm, slow, deliberate. Its bark-covered fingers unfurled, revealing something resting in its palm. A bundle, pine needles wrapped with my shoelace. I had no idea how it got that. It stepped forward, placing the bundle on the floor just outside my bed's frame. I could hear the dirt shifting beneath its weight, deep and wet, as though the cabin floor opened down into the forest itself. Once the bundle was laid down, the creature turned, shoulders cracking, and walked back toward the shattered window. But instead of stepping out into the night, it folded into the shadows and disappeared. The moment it vanished, the cabin changed again. The wooden walls returned. The dirt turned back to floorboards. The candles went out. Everything was exactly how it had been before, except for the bundle on the floor and the lingering sound of whispers crawling just beneath my thoughts. I approached it carefully, heart hammering. While I reached down to touch the bundle, it twitched. I yanked my hand back, then it unraveled by itself. Inside were teeth. Human teeth. 5 of them. Yellowed, cracked, each one etched with symbols I'd seen on trees and scrawled and set on my mirrors. As I stared, I heard a voice. Not inside my head this time, but behind me. They marked the mouth. I spun, shotgun raised, but no one was there. Just a breeze curling through the broken window. I didn't sleep. I didn't clean up the glass. I just sat in a corner until the sun rose. The next morning, I stepped outside and nearly fell to my knees. The forest was gone. Not thinned. Not cleared. Gone. replaced with endless rows of identical cabins stretching into the horizon in every direction. Each one perfectly spaced, built like mine, with the same front porch, same wood pile, same red-marked trees at the edge. I picked one at random and sprinted toward it. The closer I got, the more dread filled my chest. When I reached the door, it was already open. Inside was my living room, down to the same crooked frame on the wall and the same book I'd left open on the table 2 nights ago. I backed away and looked down the line of cabins again. Some had lights on, some had broken windows, some had figures standing silently in the doorways, staring out. All identical. That night, I wrote everything down by hand, sealed the pages in a jar, and buried it by the fire pit. I don't know if anyone will ever find it, but I had to try, because something's coming, and I think I've already let it in. I don't know how long I've been here anymore. Days blur. The sun still rises and sets, but not where it used to. Sometimes it comes up in the north, other times the west. The shadows change direction hourly. Time is wrong here, elastic. Each morning I step outside, and more cabins have appeared. Some are burnt out. Some are collapsed. One I passed yesterday had red symbols carved into the siding, dripping something black and sticky. I didn't get close. I've started hearing voices inside them. Whispers in languages I don't know, but sometimes I catch fragments in English. Help me. Don't open the cellar. He said the name. Watch the trees. The voices never come when I enter the cabins. Only when I'm outside, walking past. I tried marking my cabin with a white X, so I'd remember which one was mine, but the mark disappears every night. So now I keep the bundle of pine needles with me. It's how I know which cabin is still mine. If I lose it, I don't think I'll find my way back. 3 nights ago, I opened one of the other cabins and found a body. It was me. Same clothes. Same scar on the left eyebrow. Eyes wide open, mouth stretched into a scream. He was sitting at the kitchen table, hand clutching a pencil, frozen mid-sentence in a notebook. I read what I could. It didn't make sense. Just symbols. Repetitions. One phrase over and over. He watches from the root. I left him there. Didn't even close the door. Last night, I made the mistake of looking into one of the mirrors again. I shouldn't have. My reflection was smiling. I wasn't. Then it blinked, and I didn't. That's when I understood. These cabins, the reflections, the copies, this place is a loop. A trap. A living thing that feeds on patterns, on repetition, on people like me who thought solitude would save them. I started tearing apart the floorboards of my cabin. Underneath, I found dirt. Deeper still, roots. So many roots. Twisting, pulsing like veins. And bones. Human. Some small, like children's. Some ancient. One of them had a wedding band. I haven't worn mine in months. Today, the sky is red. The cabins are rearranged again. There's a new trail that wasn't here before. Narrow, lined with lanterns, winding through trees that seem to lean toward it like spectators. I don't want to follow it. I need to. Something is calling. Benign at first. Almost soothing. A humming vibration deep in my jaw. It knows my name. Not just the one I was given, but the one beneath it. The name I've never heard spoken aloud. And tonight I'll hear it. Because tonight is 3:13 again. And the forest is waiting. I followed the lanterns. The trail wound deeper than any path I'd seen, until the cabins vanished and the trees gave way to a vast, pulsing hollow. In its center stood the antlered figure, arms outstretched, waiting. I didn't run. I knelt. It placed a bundle in my hands, pine needles, teeth, ash, and whispered my true name. I remembered everything. I was never escaping. I was always returning. If you find this, burn the forest. Seal the hollow. Do not speak the name etched into your dreams. It's not a name, it's a key. And once it's turned, the forest walks with you. Story 4. There's something living under my grandma's house. Reddit username. When grandma died, nobody in the family wanted her house. It wasn't because it was falling apart or full of memories, though it was both. It was the smell. That sour, earthy, moldy scent that lingered no matter how many windows you opened or candles you lit. My cousin said it was just old lady funk, but I always thought it was coming from somewhere deeper. Still, I needed a place to stay after I lost my job, so I moved in. Just for a while, I told myself, the house is a one-story ranch with yellow siding and a crawl space beneath it, sealed by a heavy wooden hatch at the back. Grandma used to warn us never to go near that door. Said it was where the house breathed. We thought it was just another one of her spooky sayings. She had a lot of those, like don't whistle at night and never answer a knock you didn't hear. I'd forgotten most of them until the knock started. They came the second night I was there. 3 of them. Slow, soft, from beneath the floorboards, right under my bed. I froze, waiting for more. Nothing. I went outside in the morning to check the crawl space. The hatch was still shut tight, but the dirt around it was freshly disturbed, like somebody had been digging at it from the inside. That was just the beginning. I started hearing noises every night around the same time, 2:42 a.m. to be exact. A dragging sound beneath the floor, breathing, and once something that sounded like whispering in a voice too low to understand. I asked the neighbors if they'd ever heard anything strange from Grandma's house. Mrs. Heller, who'd lived next door for decades, gave me a look I still can't describe. Not quite fear, not quite pity. She always said it followed her from the mountain, she told me. Said it sleeps under the house because that's where it remembers dying. I laughed awkwardly. She didn't. The next night, I recorded the sounds. I set my phone on the floor and hit record before bed. At 2:42 a.m., I woke to the same dragging, the same breathing. When I listened to the playback in the morning, my skin went cold. The sound were there, but so was something else. A voice, clear and raspy, whispering the same phrase over and over. Let me remember. Let me remember. I don't know what it means, but every night it sounded a little closer. I stopped sleeping in the bedroom after that. Instead, I started crashing on the living room couch with all the lights on, wrapped in a blanket I used to hide under when I was a kid. I didn't feel any safer, but at least I wasn't directly above the crawlspace hatch. I considered opening it, to look, to prove to myself there was nothing under there. But every time I got close, I felt this pressure in my ears, like when you're underwater too long. And I swear the wood pulse beneath my feet like a heartbeat. I'd back off before even touching the latch. Then, something new happened. On the 4th night, I found the hallway light on when I woke up. I'd turn off all the lights before bed. I was sure of it. But there it was, humming softly, and beneath it, a trail of dirt. A thin, narrow smear leading from the hallway closet toward the back door. The closet was open. Inside, Grandma's coats hung still undisturbed. But the attic ladder, the pull-down kind, was lowered. That didn't make sense. The string had been cut years ago. I remember because Grandma used to yell at us for throwing shoes at it to bring it down. So we'd break something best left hidden. I climbed up, heart pounding, flashlight in hand. The attic was empty, dusty, stale, same as always, except for one thing. In the far corner, carved into the wooden support beam, were 3 words. It remembers now. I stumbled back down the ladder, slammed the closet shut, and shoved a chair under the knob. I couldn't breathe, write for hours. I just sat on the floor, rocking, muttering to myself that it had to be a prank. A leftover from some cousin messing around before they moved away. But no one else had keys to the house. And then came the fingernails. That's the only way I can describe the sound. A slow, dragging scratch along the floorboards beneath me, from one side of the room to the other, like something crawling on its belly with limbs too long to use properly. At 2:42 a.m., like clockwork, I screamed at it. What do you want? Silence followed. Then, from under the couch, I heard a voice. My grandmother's voice. Don't let it in. I didn't move the couch. I didn't look. I sat there, frozen until the sun rose, until the weight of her voice faded and the smell returned. That sour, wet dirt smell creeping up through the cracks in the floor like moldy breath. Later that day, I called a local contractor and paid him in cash to seal off the crawl space. I told him I was hearing raccoons. He looked skeptical, but agreed. He never finished the job. His tools were still on the back porch the next morning. Van gone. No note. No message. When I called, his number was disconnected. That night, the hatch was open. Just a crack. And a small handprint was pressed into the wood beside it. The handprint wasn't mine. It was too small. Like a child's. but stretched too long in the fingers like something human that had been almost right. The wood was splintered around it, and the stain looked fresh. Not blood, not dirt, something darker, sap thick and cold to the touch. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the kitchen with every light on and a knife in my hand, eyes glued to the hallway where the hatch was now fully open. Just black beneath it, a pit that looked far deeper than the 3 feet of crawl space should have allowed. I tried calling the police. I had no idea what I'd even say. Help, there's something remembering itself beneath my house. But the line buzzed once, then dropped. Dead signal. I tried again and again. Same result. When I checked my phone later, the call log was empty. Not a single record of my attempts. And then the lights began to dim. Not flicker. Dim. Slowly, deliberately, like something was squeezing the current. That's when the voice returned. This time from the vents. A dry whisper snaking through the house. It's cold down here. So cold without skin. I ran. Out the front door, down the porch steps into the yard. I didn't even have shoes on. The grass was damp and warm beneath my feet, which made no sense. It hadn't rained in a week. When I looked back at the house, every window was glowing. Not with light, but with movement. Like the walls had turned translucent, and something behind them was pushing, stretching, trying to find the edges. I could see shapes, fingers pressed to glass, faces with no eyes, mouths opening too wide. Then they vanished, and the house went still again. I stayed outside until dawn. The moment the sun crested the horizon, the door creaked open on its own. Inside, everything looked normal, except for one thing. A photo album sat on the kitchen table. Grandma's, the big leather-bound one she kept locked in her bedroom. I opened it slowly. All the pictures had changed. They were still of family, birthdays, holidays, backyard cookouts, but every face had been scratched out. Every person replaced with that same too thin, too long silhouette, standing stiff and still in every frame. And in every photo, the background had warped, like it was being sucked into something just out of sight. At the back of the album, tucked in the sleeve where she used to keep letters, was a torn page from a journal, written in Grandma's tight, deliberate hand. I buried it with its name. It wasn't enough. Then below that, in larger, shaking letters. Do not remember it. It remembers itself. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, because I had remembered. Not on purpose, but in fragments. That word it whispered. The smell. The dreams I'd been having where something crawled along the underside of the world, looking up through cracks in reality like they were floorboards. It was in me now, and I don't think there's a way to forget. I tried to leave. I packed what I could, shoved it in the back of my car, and backed out of the driveway without even locking the front door. I didn't care anymore. I just wanted distance between me and the thing under the house. But the road didn't lead out. I should have been able to hit the highway within 15 minutes. Instead, I drove for hours through back roads and narrow curves that didn't make sense. Roads that twisted on themselves, crossed again, and led me back to the same crooked pine tree by the mailbox. 3 times. On the 4th loop, the gas gauge dipped below a quarter. That's when I saw her, Grandma, standing at the side of the road, facing away from me. Her old blue cardigan flapping in the wind, the one I buried her in. I slammed on the brakes, got out, called to her. She didn't move. I walked closer, and she bent, not turned, not stepped, bent backward, spine arching in an unnatural curve until her face stared upside down at me, eyes black and wet, mouth opening wide to whisper. You brought it with you. I ran, didn't look back, drove straight home, if I can even call it that anymore. When I got back, the front door was open. Inside, everything was cold. Not just chilly, but refrigerator cold. I could see my breath. And there, in the center of the living room, was a new hatch in the floor. Not at the back of the house anymore. Beneath me, I dropped to my knees and listened. Silence. Then, so faint I thought I imagined it. A soft, wet slither. I don't know what it wants, but I know what it feeds on. Memory. It's stronger when I think about it, when I name it. That's why the journal warned me. That's why Grandma left the photos behind, scratched and defaced. She was trying to erase it, starve it, but something changed. It adapted. It doesn't just want to be remembered anymore. It wants to replace. I looked in a mirror today and saw someone else blink. Not a stranger. Me. But wrong. Like a photocopy, too many times removed. My eyes a little too wide. Teeth a little too even. And when I turned away from the mirror, the reflection kept looking. I smashed it. The shards scattered across the tile, and in every one, I could still see that face staring, smiling. Tonight, I'm not sleeping. I'm sealing the new hatch with chains, nails, salt, anything I can find. I have no idea if it'll work. But if you're reading this and you've heard dragging under your bed or voices in the walls or a knock that you didn't hear, don't remember it. Don't let it become you, because it already knows your name. I didn't sleep, but I must have blacked out. Because when I opened my eyes, I was lying on the floor beside the hatch. The chain was gone, the nails pulled free, the salt line smeared into a spiral I never made. Worse, the hatch was open again, and I don't remember opening it. Inside was only darkness, but not just absence of light darkness. This was thick, almost oily, like it had mass. It pulsed faintly, like it was breathing. I should have run, but something called me. Not a voice, a feeling, familiar, like nostalgia, so strong it hurt. The scent of old books and peppermint, the exact kind of candy Grandma always had in her purse. I reached down into the dark just a little, and something grabbed my hand. Cold, dry, but delicate, like a child's. Then it spoke, not out loud, but directly into my head. It's time to remember. I yanked my arm back and fell hard onto my back. My hand was wet, stained with something thick and black. I staggered to the sink, scrubbing, but the color wouldn't fade. And then I noticed it. Something had been written on my palm in whatever that substance was. Just a word, home. That's when I started seeing it. In the reflections. In the glass of the microwave door. In my spoon. Always just behind me. Tall, thin, crouched like it didn't quite fit in the frame of the world. Its face shifting between people I knew and strangers I didn't. At one point, it was my mother. Then Grandma. Then me. But not me. Worse than seeing it, though, was hearing it. The voices haven't stopped. Not from beneath the house anymore, but from the walls. They say things only I would know. Private memories. Words from letters I wrote and never sent. Lullabies Grandma sang to me when I was 5. It's not just inside the house. It's inside me. I've started forgetting things. My cousin's name. The color of my old bedroom. My own birthday. It steals little pieces first, memories, emotions, and replaces them with images I know aren't mine. Forests I've never walked. Graves I've never visited. A house I've never seen, but that I know is waiting at the end of a long dirt road. I called my brother yesterday. Told him to stay away from the house. He said, "You already told me that. 2 years ago." I haven't spoken to him in over a year. When I checked my outgoing calls, there were dozens. All to him. All at 2:42 a.m. The exact time the whispers begin. Whatever this thing is, it's not haunting me. It's rewriting me. I try to record myself sleeping. If I couldn't trust my memories, maybe I could trust the camera. I set up my phone across the room, aimed at the bed, and left it running all night. What I saw in the footage nearly broke me. For the first 2 hours, I lay still, eyes closed, breathing slow. Then, 2:41 a.m., my body sat up. Not like waking from a dream. It was stiff, jerky, puppet-like. I stood, walked to the corner, and began talking. But there was no sound. The audio didn't pick up anything. Just silence, except for a low hum beneath the static. Then my body turned to the camera, tilted its head too far to the side, and smiled. I've never smiled like that. The face on the screen was mine, but the way it moved, the way the eyes stayed wide, unblinking, something else was behind them. Then the screen went black. The recording cut off at 2:46 a.m. When I checked my phone, the battery was full and no other apps were open. But there was a new video in my gallery, one I didn't record. It was only 12 seconds long. A shot of the crawlspace hatch, fully open, the camera held low, as if something small or crouched was holding it. In the final second, something crawled out, just one hand, gray and wet, fingers too many, stretching toward the lens. Then static. I dropped the phone. I haven't picked it up since. I don't think there's a way to fight this. I tried smudging the house, burning sage, salting the thresholds again. Even tried reciting prayers Grandma used to whisper when the power went out during storms. Nothing helps. Last night, the walls bled. Thin red lines oozed between the wooden panels, slow and steady, forming words in looping script. "You're the house now." And I felt it. The corners stretching further when I wasn't looking. The ceiling sagging like breath held too long. The floor beneath my feet, warm, pulsing, aware. I think it's using me to grow. Maybe it always was. I looked into a mirror today and didn't see myself. Not at first. I saw a dirt tunnel. And at the end, something crawling, slow and hungry. It saw me too, and smiled. Then I blinked, and it was me again. But my mouth tasted like soil, and my hand smelled like ash. I think I'm a hatch now. The door, the invitation. And if someone else steps inside this house, it'll remember them too. Unless I end it first. I've nailed every door shut from the inside. Covered the windows with blackout curtains. The only light now is from candles, and even they flicker strangely, pulsing like veins. I haven't eaten in days. The food tastes like dust. My tongue feels swollen, my throat dry, but I don't feel hungry. The house is feeding. It hums when I speak, shifts when I cry. Sometimes it laughs with my voice, through the vents, through the pipes. I've stopped answering it. I've stopped speaking at all, because I'm forgetting what's mine. Today I found an old photo in the hallway. I don't remember putting it there. It was of Grandma holding a baby. I assumed it was me, but the baby had black eyes and too many teeth. The more I looked, the more wrong it became. Grandma's arms were bark. The background was that endless dirt tunnel I've seen in my dreams. And the back of the photo had something scrawled in her handwriting. If it lives in your mouth, it never dies. I tried burning the photo. It wouldn't catch. The flame avoided it, danced around it. So I buried it under the floorboards, where the heartbeat is loudest, where the boards sweat. I hear scratching now, not from beneath the house, from inside the walls. It wants out. I remember when I was 7, hiding under this very table while Grandma hummed to herself and made tea. She used to say the hum kept it asleep, a rhythm it couldn't break. But I'm not Grandma, and the hum keeps changing. It's learning, mimicking. Now, when I hum, it finishes the song. It waits for the last note and repeats it exactly. Today I found dirt in my bed, not on the covers, underneath the sheets, layered thick between the mattress and frame, embedded in the fabric. Something had been sleeping there, and it smelled like me. I think it's wearing me now. Part of me, anyway. Trying on, practicing. Yesterday, I saw my own face outside the window just watching. Didn't blink, didn't smile, just stood there waiting. I didn't open the door, but I don't think I'll have to. There's a rot in the walls now. Mushrooms blooming in the corners. Long, gray stalks with black gills. Why get too close? They whisper. And they whisper things I've never told anyone. Secrets I've buried deeper than bones. Things I forgot I even remembered. It's all connected. Grandma didn't die of old age. She died of memory. It filled her up, and the house kept it. Now it's full of her fears, her warnings, her songs. Soon, it'll be full of me. I think that's the point. It doesn't want to kill you. It wants to keep you. Tonight, I opened the hatch. I don't remember deciding to. I just remember the smell, wet dirt, and old breath, and the tunnel yawning wide, wider than it should be. I climbed down. It didn't resist me. Now I'm sitting in the dark, beneath the house, knees pressed to my chest. There are roots growing through my hands. My breath tastes like soil. I can hear others breathing nearby. They sound like me. If someone finds this, don't open the hatch. Don't stay overnight. Don't remember this place. Forget my name. Forget this house. Because once it knows you, it never lets go. Story 5. My daughter's imaginary friend isn't imaginary. Reddit username. U Kosatica Silenspiral 23. When my daughter Lily turned 4, she started talking to someone named Mr. Grin. At first, I chalked it up to the usual imaginary friend stuff. She'd always had a vivid imagination. Her tea parties involved dragons. Her coloring books were full of monsters with hearts. It was cute, honestly. Sweet. But Mr. Grin wasn't sweet. He didn't play like her other imaginary friends. She never invited him to her tea parties or asked for an extra plate at dinner. No, Mr. Grin lived in the ceiling, she said. He doesn't like to come down when the lights are on. That was the first red flag. I I asked what he looked like. She drew him with her crayons. Tall, thin, long arms that dangled past his knees, and a smile that wrapped around his whole face. No eyes, just a big grin full of pointy teeth. I laughed it off, but she didn't. She looked up at the ceiling and whispered, "He doesn't like when you laugh at him." That night, I heard a thump from her room. I rushed in, expecting her to have fallen out of bed, but she was sitting straight up under the covers, staring at the ceiling. I asked her what happened. "Mr. Grin was mad," she said. "He bumped his head because he was crawling too fast." I told her Mr. Grin wasn't real. That was just a dream. She didn't respond. She just lay back down and whispered, "Don't say that." He's listening. A few days later, things escalated. Lily refused to go into her room during the day. I'd find her toys arranged in strange shapes on the floor, circles, spirals, patterns that seemed too precise for a 4-year-old. When I tried to move them, she'd scream. "He needs them like that. He'll get mad." I tried to reason with her, but she'd just plug her ears and hum to herself, rocking back and forth. Her drawings got worse too. More of Mr. Grin, sometimes with other children. All of them looking up at him with hollow faces. I finally brought it up to her pediatrician, who referred me to a child psychologist. We made an appointment, but it wasn't for another 3 weeks. That was too long. The night before her 5th birthday, Lily came into our room and climbed into bed with me and my husband. "He wants to give me a present," she whispered. "What kind of present?" I asked. "A new face." My blood turned cold. I looked over at her in the dark, and she was smiling. But it wasn't her smile. It was too wide, too tight. I turned on the lamp, and her face was normal again. Sleepy, confused. I told myself I imagined it. But deep down, I knew I hadn't. I started sleeping with the baby monitor on again, even though Lily hadn't used it in over a year. I placed it on her nightstand while she slept and kept the other half by my bed. I told her it was just in case she needed me. She nodded slowly, never taking her eyes off the ceiling. That first night, everything was quiet until 2:13 a.m. A faint tapping sound came through the monitor. Not like footsteps, not like the creak of old wood. It was faster, lighter, like fingernails, clicking, skittering. I turned up the volume. That's when I heard the whispering, low and garbled, like someone speaking underwater. I couldn't make out the words, just the tone. Sweet, urgent, almost coaxing. Then Lily's voice. "No, not yet. She's not ready." Silence. I ran into her room. She was fast asleep, arms curled around her teddy bear, mouth slightly open. Nothing on the monitor had woken her, or so it seemed. But her eyes were moving behind her lids. Rapide, tweaking, and the air in her room was freezing. I checked the thermostat. 72. Still, my breath fogged in front of me. I took her back to my bed and held her all night. I didn't sleep. The next morning, she acted normal again until I asked about the night before. She frowned. "Mr. Grin says not to tell you anymore. He says your face is already broken." "What does that mean?" I asked. She shrugged. "I don't know. He talks funny." That was when I started doing my own research. Imaginary friends are common, especially in bright, creative kids. But most disappear after age 5. Lily was turning 5 tomorrow. Part of me hoped that maybe, just maybe, Mr. Grin would vanish too. That night, I found a new drawing in her room. It was our family, me, my husband, and Lily. We were all standing under our house. Not inside, under, buried. Our faces were upside down, eyes hollow, and above us, scrawled in red crayon, was Mr. Grin. His smile stretched wider than the page. And next to him, in Lily's messy handwriting, "We all live in the ceiling now." I hid the drawing and didn't say a word. But Lily knew. She didn't talk to me at all the next day. Barely acknowledged her birthday. No cake. No friends. Just silence. At 2:13 a.m., the monitor came alive again. This time it wasn't whispers. It was laughter. Wet and wrong, like someone gurgling while they giggled. I rushed to her room and flung open the door. She was floating, 6 inches above her bed, limbs limp like a marionette. Her head tilted back, eyes rolled up, mouth open in a horrible, stiff grin that wasn't hers. Then she dropped. Hard. She gasped awake, crying. "Why did you come in?" she sobbed. He was almost done. I held her, tried to comfort her, but she kept screaming over and over. You ruined it. Now he's mad. The next morning, she wouldn't look at me. Her eyes were puffy and red, her voice hoarse from crying. She didn't speak during breakfast, didn't touch her food. When I asked if she wanted to talk, she just whispered, "He says you broke the rules. Now he has to fix everything." "What rules, Lily?" She didn't answer. That afternoon, I tried calling the psychologist again to move our appointment up. Her office didn't pick up. I left a voicemail, frantic and rambling, barely coherent. Then I called my husband. He travels for work, and I begged him to come home early. He didn't sound convinced. "You think our daughter's possessed by her imaginary friend?" "No," I said, voice shaking. "I think something's pretending to be her friend, and it's not imaginary." He said he'd be back tomorrow. That night, I heard footsteps above the ceiling. It wasn't an attic. Our house didn't have one. Just rafters and insulation. I knew that, yet the steps were unmistakable, heavy, slow, like someone pacing in a small circle. Then came the giggling. Not Lily's. Too deep. I rushed to her room. She was sitting on the edge of her bed, eyes wide, staring straight up. Her hands were clutched in her lap. When I sat beside her, she flinched. "He said you're going to forget me soon," she said softly. "No, baby. Never." She looked at me with something older than fear. Something like resignation. "He makes people forget. That's what he does when you break the rules. He takes the people out of their bodies and puts himself inside." I swallowed hard. "Who told you that?" She tilted her head, still staring upward. "The boy with no mouth." My skin crawled. "What boy?" He used to live in the ceiling too, but he didn't follow the rules either. So now he just watches. That night, I moved her into my bed again. I locked all the doors and kept the lights on. But at exactly 2:13 a.m., the hallway lights flickered off. Then the closet door creaked open on its own. From the darkness inside, I heard that sick, wet giggle again. I pulled Lily close, whispering that everything would be okay, even though I didn't believe it. And then silence, until Lily whispered, "Don't scream." I looked down. Her eyes were wide with terror, not looking at me, but over my shoulder. I turned just in time to see something pale slither into the ceiling vent, too fast to fully register. Something tall, something smiling. The next morning, I found footprints on the ceiling. Not like dust or discoloration, actual prints, inverted like someone had walked across it with bare, wet feet. They trailed from Lily's room to ours, then stopped directly above our bed. Each toe was too long. Each foot had 6 toes. I took photos, but when I checked my phone later, the gallery was empty. Every image I'd taken was gone, even ones from weeks ago, like they'd never existed. I tried taking new ones. The shutter clicked, but the screen stayed black. Then the camera app froze. When I looked up from my phone, Lily was staring at me with tears in her eyes. He says pictures make him too real. That's why he erases them. That was when I called my husband again and screamed at him to get home. He promised he'd be back by nightfall. "Just hold on," he said. "It's probably a breakdown. Kids go through phases." "No, David, it's not a phase." I wanted to run. I wanted to pack up and drive far away. But something told me it wouldn't matter. Mr. Grin wasn't part of this house. He was part of us now, or at least of Lily. And if I left, he might go with her. I couldn't let that happen. So I did something desperate. I went to the crawl space behind the house, the place where the old ducks run. I figured if he was using the vents to move around, maybe I could block them. Salt, symbols, anything. I didn't get far. Inside, near the far wall, I found a toy. Not one of Lily's. It was a stuffed rabbit, gray, matted, eyes missing. And it smelled like mildew and iron. As I picked it up, something shifted behind me in the dark. I turned and saw him, only for a second. His head scraped the top of the crawl space. His arms dragged behind him, fingertips twitching. No face, just that smile. Endless, ripping from ear to ear, teeth like broken glass. Then he was gone. I scrambled out, covered in dirt, shaking. That night, Lily didn't sleep. She stood in the middle of her room, facing the ceiling, and whispered things in a language I didn't recognize. Her eyes were rolled back. Her mouth trembled. At 2:13 a.m., she screamed. I ran in and found her on the floor, clutching her head. "He's inside now. He's trying on my skin." I didn't know what to do. I held her. I rocked her. I begged whatever was listening to stop, but the room kept smiling. Every shadow curved upward. Every corner bent wrong. When my husband finally came home, Lily ran to him and buried her face in his chest. He looked at me strangely. "She's fine," he said slowly. "She's just playing." Then he turned toward the hallway and added with a grin, "She just wants to show me where she sleeps now." The way David said it chilled me. His voice was his, but not. A little too smooth. Too slow. Like he was reading a line someone else had written. I followed them down the hall, heart pounding, trying not to let panic take over. Lily was still clinging to him, but she didn't look relieved anymore. She looked trapped. When they reached her room, she hesitated. "He's in there," she whispered. David just smiled wider. "Then let's say hello." He reached for the doorknob, but I grabbed his wrist. "Wait." His eyes flicked to mine, and for a split second, they weren't his eyes. They were completely black. No whites, no iris, just void. I stumbled back. "You're not." But he blinked, and they were normal again. "What's wrong with you?" he asked, and his voice was back to being David's. Tired, confused, like I'd just accused him of murder. Lily was crying now, small and silent. I pulled her away from him and locked the door to her room. "She's not going in there." He didn't argue, just walked away, slowly, calmly. That night, I didn't sleep. I barricaded Lily and me in the guest room. No lights, just candles. I burned sage. I prayed, loudly, desperately. Every shadow danced. Every creak sounded like footsteps. But nothing happened until the candle went out on its own. I relit it, hands shaking. Lily was curled up beside me, clutching her teddy bear. I whispered, "We're going to be okay." She shook her head. "He's inside Daddy now," she said. I didn't know what to say, so I just held her. But something in the room changed. The temperature, the pressure, like the air itself was watching us. Then came the voice, from the ceiling. It was David's, but twisted, like someone else was wearing his throat. "You shouldn't have broken the rules." I covered Lily's ears. "Stop it," I screamed. The ceiling above us began to ripple, bubbling like boiling water. A crack split down the center, long and jagged, and something moved behind it. A slithering sound, long nails scraping. "Don't worry," the voice crooned. "There's room for one more." The door behind us shook violently. Not like knocking, like something was trying to be born through it. I grabbed Lily and ran. Down the hall, into the garage, into the car. I didn't have shoes, barely had keys, but I drove. Fast, blind with terror. Didn't stop until we were 3 towns over, parked in front of a 24-hour diner with buzzing neon lights. Lily hadn't spoken the entire drive, but just as I turned off the engine, she whispered, "He's still with us. He likes the car." We didn't go home. I used the last of my savings to rent a small apartment 2 towns over. Furnished, border, temporary. I figured if I could keep Lily away from the house, and from David, we could outrun whatever this was. That maybe Mr. Grin was bound to the place somehow. But you can't outrun something that lives inside a smile. The first few nights were quiet. Lily was still scared, but she started drawing again, normal things. Rainbows, dogs, trees with birds. No more spirals. No more grins. I started to breathe again. Then I saw him. Not in person. On my phone. An unknown number texted me a photo. It was Lily, asleep in bed, from the corner of the room, taken while I was in the kitchen making tea. I dropped the cup. Hot water splashed my arm, but I barely felt it. I ran into her room. She was still asleep, unharmed, but the window was open. 3 floors up. I moved her to my bed and stayed awake all night with a knife beside me. Phone off, lights on. I didn't sleep. The next day, the photos started appearing in other places. One taped to our door. Lily standing beside a tall, grinning figure in silhouette. One slipped under the bathroom mirror. A family portrait, me, Lily, and Mr. Grin standing where David should have been. Then one on the fridge. Just a mouth, smiling, torn from a larger image. Red crayon smeared across the teeth. That night, Lily came to me holding her teddy bear. "He says you're forgetting the rules again." "I don't know the rules," I said. She looked up at me, expressionless. "You knew them before I was born." "What does that mean?" "He says you were one of the first." My stomach twisted. I asked her to explain, but she wouldn't. Just crawled into bed and stared at the ceiling until she drifted to sleep. The dream started after that. Every night, the same place, a long hallway with doors on either side, all of them open. Inside each was a version of Lily. One with black eyes, one with her mouth sewn shut, one that turned slowly and smiled. I'd run, door to door, screaming for the real her, but she was never there. Until last night, I found a door that was closed. Inside was Lily, crying, real, and behind her, Mr. Grin, hands on her shoulders, whispering in a voice I didn't want to recognize. He sounded like me. I woke up screaming. Sweat drenched the sheets, and Lily was already awake, sitting at the edge of the bed, arms wrapped around her teddy bear. She didn't look scared, just tired. He's almost done, she said softly. With what? I asked, voice cracking. She wouldn't answer. I packed our things that morning, told her we were leaving again. No destination, just away. But when I opened the apartment door, I stopped cold. David was standing there, or something wearing David. His smile was too wide, his eyes too still, and he didn't blink. Not once. Hey, he said casually, you forgot your husband. I slammed the door in his face. From the other side, he laughed. Not David's laugh. That thick, gurgling giggle I'd heard through the baby monitor. Wet and hollow, like lungs filled with mud. He wants to come home, Lily, he sang. I pushed the dresser against the door, locked the windows, sat in the middle of the room, holding Lily like a shield and a lifeline. She whispered, you have to go back. What? To the house. He's still anchored there. That's why he's using Daddy. That's why he keeps changing. Istir de her. How do you know this? Her voice dropped. He told me everything. He shows me things in dreams. Things that already happened. Things that haven't happened yet. I didn't want to listen. Didn't want to believe. But it made sense in the most horrific way. Like it had always been true, just waiting for me to remember. And then came the scratching. From inside the walls. Faster now. More desperate. The lights flickered dim, then went out. The air grew thick. Stagnant. Wrong. Mommy. Lily whispered, her voice tiny. He's going to peel you next. That night, I gave in. I drove us back to the house. I don't know why. Maybe to end it. Maybe to understand. Maybe because, deep down, some part of me belonged to it already. Maybe it wasn't about Lily at all. Maybe I was the door all along. The house looked normal in the dark. Still. Silent. The kind of stillness that comes after something terrible. I opened the door and stepped inside, holding Lily's hand. The lights flickered on by themselves. In the living room, the ceiling hatch was wide open. Go ahead, Lily said. He's waiting. I turned to look at her, and her face changed. Just slightly. The smile was too wide. I climbed into the crawl space. The air was thick and wet, like breathing through cotton soaked in blood. I crawled forward, deeper into the dark, the wooden beams tightening around me like ribs. Then I saw him, grinning wide, arms open, wearing my face. He whispered, "You've always been mine." I screamed, but no sound came out. Then he leaned close and said, "She's not your daughter anymore." Behind me, I heard Lily giggle, and then the hatch slammed shut. If someone finds this, please remember her name. Please remember mine, because that's the last thing he takes. Your name. And once it's gone, so are you. Story 6. I work night security at a forest ranger tower. Reddit username. I took the job because I needed to be alone. After everything that happened last year, the divorce, the funeral, the near breakdown, I wanted distance from people. Quiet. Somewhere I could breathe. So when I saw a listing for a night security position at a remote forest ranger tower in the Pacific Northwest, I didn't even hesitate. No phone signal. No visitors. Just me, a logbook, and a panoramic view of endless pines. Perfect. The first few nights were peaceful. I logged entries like I was supposed to, checked the equipment, kept an eye on the fire line sensors. The ranger who trained me, Mac, was gruff, said barely 10 words, and left me with one final warning before he drove off. If you hear anything that sounds like yourself, don't answer. I laughed. He didn't. I asked what he meant. He just said, "You'll know," and peeled off down the dirt road. That night, I kept my flashlight extra close. Nothing happened. Not at first. Just whined through the trees, the distant call of an owl, the creak of the tower in the cold. I tried to tell myself Mac was just screwing with me. Rangers have a messed up sense of humor sometimes. Then, on the fourth night, I heard footsteps. Not downstairs, upstairs. Above me, where there shouldn't have been anything but the roof and stars. I froze. The steps were slow, deliberate, and directly over my head. I flicked on the floodlights, grabbed the old service rifle from its rack, and climbed the ladder to the upper hatch. Empty. No prints. No signs of entry. Just a cold wind and a full moon. I didn't sleep after that. The following evening, I started noticing changes. My thermos wasn't where I left it. A page in the logbook had been torn out, and one of the weather sensors outside had been turned toward the tower. I chalked it up to my own stress. Being alone in the woods does weird things to your brain. Then, on night 6, the radio crackled. Not the emergency radio. The old one. The analog, dusty one that Max said didn't work anymore. Static hissed from it for a while. Then a voice broke through. Help me. It was my voice. Exactly mine. Breathy. Ragged. Desperate. I stared at the radio like it had grown teeth. Then it said again, louder this time, help me. I'm still out here. I switched it off and shoved it in a drawer. Then I heard it. From the woods. Far off. Echoing between the trees. Help me. Same voice. Same cadence. It was calling me from inside the forest. I didn't leave the tower that night. Even though protocol said I should investigate unusual sounds within a certain radius, there was no way I was stepping into those woods after hearing my own voice echoing out of them. Instead, I locked every door and hatch, double-checked the rifle's magazine, and sat in the corner with my back to the wall, eyes fixed on the stairs. Just in case. The voice didn't come back. But the silence that followed was worse. It felt aware. The next morning, I radioed the ranger station and asked if there were any prank reports, any signs of a breach in the tower perimeter. They brushed it off, said the mountains could do strange things to sound, especially if I was already the quiet type. I wanted to argue, but what could I say? Hey, I think a doppelganger is trying to lure me into the woods. Night 7 came fast. The air was heavy, electric. Storms were rolling in from the west, and flashes of lightning lit up the forest in eerie, slow snapshots. I kept all the lights on, radio off, windows shut. Then, at exactly 2:13 a.m., I heard the knock. It came from the front door, 4 sharp raps, like a polite visitor. I grabbed the rifle, crept to the door, and said, "Who's there?" No answer. I checked the monitor above the door. Nothing. The knock came again. "Who is it?" This time, the voice answered. "I'm you. Let me in." I backed away, heart hammering. "No." "You called for help," it said. "I'm onsetting." I didn't call for anything. It chuckled. "Yes, you did. The first night, when you were alone, when you whispered to no one." My mind raced. I had whispered something that first night. Just a passing thought. God, I wish someone else was here. Was that all it took? "I'm here now," it said, "and I remember things you've forgotten." Footsteps began circling the tower. I checked the monitors again. Still nothing. Static flickered across the screens. The floodlights sputtered. One by one, the external cameras went dark. Then I saw it. Through the window. Me, standing in the clearing, smiling up at the tower. Same clothes. Same face. But the smile was wrong. Too still. Too wide. It raised one hand slowly and pointed at me. Then mouthed something. I couldn't hear it, but I knew what it said. "You're already outside." I backed away from the window, every hair on my body standing on end. I didn't blink. I didn't breathe. Just stared at my double standing in the clearing, still pointing, still smiling. And then it walked backward into the woods. Not turn around. Walk backward, like a puppet being reeled in. I slammed the shutters and turned off all the lights. Sat in the middle of the floor, rifle across my lap, trying to remember every horror story I'd ever heard about forests and echoes and things that look like us. None of them ended well. Sleep wasn't even an option. My mind raced with thoughts I didn't want to have. What if this thing could climb the tower? What if it was already inside? Then I remembered what Mac had said. If you hear anything that sounds like yourself, don't answer. He knew. I had no more. When the sun finally rose, I drove the 40 miles down to the ranger station. Mac wasn't there, but his name was still on the personnel board. I asked the clerk if he was around. She looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. Mac? He retired 4 years ago. No, I said. He trained me. A week ago. She shook her head. That's not possible. She pulled up the employee records. No recent activity. Mac hadn't clocked in since 2019. She let me print his last known address. Said she wasn't supposed to, but the look on her face told me she'd seen enough things up here to know when to break a rule. I drove straight there. It was a small house tucked into the trees. Overgrown. Windows boarded up. Mail piled so high it looked like mulch. I knocked anyway. Nothing. I circled around back and found a note tacked to the door. Faded, stained, but legible. If you've seen it, it's already chosen you. Don't feed it your voice. Don't feed it your name. I tried the doorknob. Unlocked. Inside, the place looked like a war bunker. Maps of the forest plaster across the walls. Strings connecting locations. Photos marked with dates and coordinates. All the photos had people in them, each staring blankly mid-sentence. All looked like they just realized they were being watched. One face repeated over and over again. Meaning, every photo, every angle, me in the tower, me on the trail, me at the ranger station, except I hadn't taken any of them. I stumbled back from the wall of photos, knees nearly giving out. Every angle showed me, my face, my clothes, my posture, but there was something off in each one. A subtle shift, a wrongness. In one, my eyes were looking in two directions. In another, my mouth was slightly open and smiling, while the rest of my face remained blank. The timestamps didn't make sense either. Some were dated from before I even took the job. I tore one photo down and flipped it over. A single word was scrawled on the back in messy black ink. Echoed. I found a small cassette recorder on the desk, labeled simply Play ME. I pressed the button. Mac's voice crackled through the static, tired and broken. If you're hearing this, it means you saw it. You let it see you. That's how it starts. It watches. It learns. Then it makes a version of you that doesn't forget. That's what the echo is. A copy. One that doesn't need sleep or food or rules. Static burst. I tried to burn mine. Didn't work. Just made it louder. They feed off attention. Off recognition. If it knows your name, it can wear you like skin. Click. I sat there in stunned silence, the recorder dead in my hand. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. Hello. No sound. Then faint breathing. Then my voice whispered, I told you not to answer. The line went dead. I left everything behind. Raced back to the truck. Didn't stop until I was halfway up the mountain, tower in sight. But something was wrong. The tower door was wide open. Inside, the lights were already on. I crept in, rifle raised, and nearly dropped it. The logbook was open on the desk. Entry written in my handwriting. Night 14. He's almost ready. I hadn't written that. And yet, I remember the words. Felt them in my hand. In my mouth. That's when the radio clicked on. Static again. Then a voice, mine singing. A lullaby I hadn't heard since I was a kid. One my mother used to sing to me when I was too afraid to sleep. I turned to the window, and there I was again, standing at the tree line, humming. But this time, the copy raised a hand and waved. I didn't wave back. I don't know why that felt important, but it did. Like that small act, mirroring it would invite it in further, would make its existence more real. Instead, I backed away from the window and locked the hatch behind me. The singing from the radio didn't stop. My voice, his voice, kept crooning that lullaby, but slower now. Warped. The words began to change. Not just a song anymore. Instructions. Let me in. Let me wear you. You're tired. You're hollow. You're ready. I ripped the cord out. But even with the radio dead, the voice kept singing from the vents, from the corners, from the walls. That night, I dreamed of mirrors. An endless room of them, all showing me, but never moving when I did. My reflections walked on their own, each twitching, each smile splitting farther and farther until the glass cracked. When I woke up, there was another log entry. I hadn't written it. Isuir ihodnte. But there it was in my handwriting. Night 15. The skin fits better now. I tore the page out, burned it. That's when I heard someone climbing the stairs outside the tower. I froze. Step by step. Slow. Deliberate. I checked the monitor. Nothing. Then came a knock. 3 slow raps. I raised a rifle and said nothing. A pause. Then my own voice. I know you're awake. I didn't move. Do you remember the girl in the well? It said. My breath caught in my throat. Because I did. I was 9. Summer camp. We weren't supposed to be near the old well. I threw a rock down and it hit something. A splash. Then a voice. A girl's voice. Help me. I never told anyone. Never checked. I buried it. Now I was speaking it aloud. I remember everything you've forgotten, it said. That's how I fill the cracks. That's how I become. I aimed a rifle at the door. Leave me alone. It laughed. You're the one who invited me in, remember? That first night. That wish you whispered. God, I wish someone else was here. Silence. Then, you should see what I've done with your face. I didn't respond. Not with words. I took every chair, table, crate, anything heavy, and piled it against the door. My heart was hammering, sweat pouring down my neck. That thing outside, it didn't just sound like me anymore. It thought like me, and it was learning faster. The voice didn't speak again, but the walls started whispering. Not my voice this time, others. Countless. A chorus of stolen cells murmuring through the tower wood, a sea of forgotten people echoing just beneath the surface. Some cried, some begged, some laughed softly, endlessly. I curled into a corner with a rifle. That's when the tower started shaking. Not violently, subtly, just enough to let me know the structure wasn't mine anymore. Like it was exhaling. I don't remember falling asleep, but when I opened my eyes, everything had changed. The sky was wrong. No stars, no clouds, just a black sheet stretched above the trees, and in the center, a single white pinprick blinking. Not like a star, like an eye. I turned on every light and checked the logbook. Another entry had appeared. Night 16, I watched you dream. Your secrets taste like sugar. I slammed it shut and backed away. That's when the monitor flickered on. I hadn't touched it. The camera feed showed the stairs, and someone was coming up. Step by step, exactly like before. Except this time, the thing on the screen wasn't me. It was wearing my face, yes, but the body was wrong. Too tall, joints bending the wrong way, mouth moving without sound, like it was rehearsing something. Then the audio clicked on, and it said, "Let's trade." I shut the monitor off and ran to the hatch. Nothing below, but that didn't reassure me, because I knew what it wanted now. It wasn't just mimicking me. It wanted to replace me. It already knew how I thought, how I walked, how I sounded. All that was left was for me to forget who I really was. I looked at my reflection in the dark window, and for a second, just a flicker, it didn't copy me. That flicker nearly broke me. Just a second, but it was enough. My reflection lagged. I turned my head, and it was just slightly off, like someone watching through a delay. Then it snapped back into sync with a sickening grin. I covered the window with a blanket. Couldn't bear to look again. The logbook sat on the desk, silent now. No new messages, but I knew it was waiting. The air inside the tower changed. It smelled like wet bark and copper. The smell of the woods after something had bled into the soil. I walked to the hatch, rifle in hand, and threw it open. The stairs were empty. But on the landing below was a small envelope. I grabbed it, slammed the hatch shut, and opened the letter with trembling fingers. Inside was a single photo. Me, asleep in the tower chair. Something standing behind me. Tall, crooked, faceless, but grinning. Its mouth stretched ear to ear, full of teeth that looked exactly like mine. On the back of the photo, "You look better this way." I burned it. I wanted to run, to abandon the post. But the problem was, I didn't know if I'd make it out. Or worse, what if I already had? That thought haunted me. Had it already replaced me somewhere? Was I now the echo? I started testing myself. Little things. Writing my name backwards. Drawing symbols from childhood. Saying things only I would know. Most of it felt real. Felt mine. Until I found one word in my notebook I didn't remember writing. Just a single name, gravel. I have no memory of ever writing that. But it was scrawled over and over again in the margins of my journal. Hundreds of times. Gravel, gravel, gravel. That night, I woke to the sound of something breathing under the floorboards. Slow, rhythmic, as if the tower itself was alive. Then I heard my voice whispering directly into my ear. from inside my own skull. I'm already wearing your dreams. I don't think I can last much longer. Every night, it takes more of me. I don't know what it will do when it finally has all of me. I just know it's close. The logbook now opens itself. Tonight's entry is already waiting. Night 17. The echo has stopped repeating. It's starting to speak for itself. Tonight, I looked in a mirror and didn't recognize my own eyes. They blinked when I didn't. Smile without my mouth moving. I think I've lost. Or maybe I was the echo all along. Maybe the real me is still in the woods, screaming with no mouth, a hollow sound eaten by pine. I'm leaving this log behind for the next one who takes the job. If you're reading this, burn the tower. Don't stay past night 5. And whatever you do, don't answer yourself, because once you do, you'll never stop echoing. Story 7. The man in the crawl space knows my name. Reddit username. U Kosatica Paintedis 86. When I moved into my aunt's house after she died, the realtor warned me about the crawl space. Old house, she said, flicking through papers. Built weird. The crawl space runs under the entire structure. We usually seal him, but the last contractor swore someone was still living down there in the 60s. I laughed. She didn't, but I took the house anyway. It was free, minus taxes and repairs, and I needed a restart after my breakup and job loss. A quiet place. Something I can make mine. It started with the sounds. Soft ones like scratching, shuffling, sometimes faint humming late at night, rising from the floorboards. I convinced myself it was plumbing, or raccoons, or the house settling. Then I found the note. It was slipped under my bedroom door during the night, folded into a tight square, paper yellowed with age. On it, scrawled in dark ink. Hello, I've missed you. No name. No explanation. I stared at it for a long time before convincing myself it was left over from the previous owner. A prank or an old letter that got caught somewhere. The next morning, I found muddy fingerprints on the inside of the hallway walls. 3 fingers, long and narrow. The crawl space entrance was in the laundry room, an old wooden hatch with rusted hinges. I avoided it at first, but after the second note, it's so lonely down here, I opened it. Stale air rushed up like a breath that had been held too long. The flashlight beam caught concrete, dust, and piles of old junk. A child's tricycle, rotten wood beams, ragged insulation. Everything looked untouched until I saw the footprints. Border, human, long toes, leading toward the far corner. That night, I dreamed of a man crawling out from under the bed. Slow, deliberate, with arms that bent backwards and teeth that never closed. He whispered my name, not aloud, but inside my skull. When I woke up, another note was waiting on the floor. You said you'd never leave me. I live alone. No one else has keys. No one should know my name. I started keeping a knife by my bed. The police came, of course. I called them the morning after I found the 3rd note. Don't pretend you don't remember me. I didn't tell them about the dreams, just that someone might be living in my crawl space. Maybe a squatter. Maybe something worse. They checked it out, crawling in with flashlights and a dog. Nothing. They were polite, but I could see the look they gave each other as they left. Another lonely homeowner. Another too quiet house, getting to someone's head. That night, I duct taped the hatch shut, even stacked bricks on top of it. Didn't matter. At 3:12 a.m., I woke up to humming. Not from the hatch. From under the bed. I didn't move. I couldn't. Every muscle locked, heart pounding in my throat. Then came the voice. I can see your feet. The room went ice cold. I leapt from the bed and turned on every light in the house, checking every corner, even the attic. Nothing. No one. But when I returned to the bedroom, the bed skirt was ripped, and a new note sat on my pillow. You still sleep like you did when you were little. I couldn't breathe. I didn't remember this person, this thing, but it knew me. It knew details, intimate ones. I slept curled to one side. I still kept a night light buried behind a lamp so no one would know. And somehow it did. I called my mom the next day, asked about my childhood, if I ever had an imaginary friend or something strange happen in this house. She hesitated long enough for me to notice. You had a night terror, she finally said. When you were 5, said there was a man in the floor. We thought it was the old heating ducts. Did I say what he looked like? Another pause. No, but you wouldn't sleep unless your bed was pushed into the middle of the room. You said he liked the corners. I ended the call and walked through the house. Every corner suddenly felt darker. That night, I moved the bed into the center again. And still, at 3:12 a.m., I heard the voice, closer this time. You're finally starting to remember. The next morning, I found a crawl space hatch open. The tape was peeled clean off, not torn, not cut, like it had been lifted within human precision. The bricks I had stacked were neatly placed beside the hatch in a perfect line. And below, inside the darkness, a new note, sitting perfectly centered at the edge of the opening. Come down and finish what you started. That was the moment I truly cracked. I packed a duffel bag, locked every door, and drove 3 towns over to a cheap motel. Old school key lock, buzzing fluorescent light in the bathroom, no crawl spaces. I didn't care. I needed distance from that house. From him. I left my phone behind too. Something told me he could follow it. He knew too much already. The first night in the motel was the first time I'd slept in days, but not without dreams. In it, I was 6 again, standing in the center of the hallway of my childhood home. Only the walls were pulsing, breathing. I could hear him moving under the floorboards, whispering my name. Then I looked down. My feet weren't touching the ground. The floor had opened like a mouth, and a pale hand was wrapping around my ankle, too long, fingers with too many joints pulling gently. And still, he was humming. I woke up gasping, lightheaded. There was a knock at the motel door. I crept to the peephole. No one. I waited, watched, nothing. But when I opened the door, a new note was taped to the outside. This isn't about the house. I nearly dropped it. Those 6 words rewrote everything. Because I'd been thinking about it all wrong. It wasn't about where I was. It was about me. He was following me. Later that night, I caught my reflection moving wrong. I brushed my teeth, looked away for a second, then caught in the corner of my eye, my mirrored self staring at me, mouth wide open, humming. The same tune from the dreams. From the crawl space. I punched the mirror. Shards fell to the sink, some embedding in my knuckles. I didn't care. I just kept staring at the broken surface, at all the little fragments of myself. In one of them, for the briefest moment, I blinked, but the reflection didn't. I left the motel that night, bleeding and barefoot. There was no logic to it, just fear. I walked until sunrise, through parking lots and side streets, until I reached a diner near the edge of town. I must have looked like hell, because the waitress didn't ask questions when I sat down, just handed me a mug of coffee and pointed to the bathroom. In the mirror, I cleaned the glass from my hand. But something else caught my attention. On my collarbone, written in faded black ink like an old tattoo, were 4 words I'd never seen before. He lives inside names. Not a scab, not a trick of the light. Ink, etched into my skin like it had always been there. I scrubbed at it until it bled. When I got back to the booth, a man was sitting across from me. Gray coat, hollow cheeks, paper-thin skin. Something about him itched in my skull like a forgotten dream. You've seen him, he said without looking up. Haven't you? I froze. What? He slid a napkin across the table. On it was a crude sketch of the crawlspace door and the thing inside it. Ben Beckford. All teeth. All patience. He followed my sister, the man said. When she moved away, we thought it was over. But then she started talking in her sleep, writing things she didn't remember, smiling for too long. What happened to her? I whispered. He looked at me for the first time. His eyes were 2 pits of grief. She forgot her name. That's how he took her. That shook me, because in the past few days, I'd caught myself hesitating. Signing forms. Logging into my email. Staring at ID cards. Like I couldn't quite remember who I was. Like my own name didn't belong to me anymore. He doesn't want your body, the man said. He wants your identity, your memory, your history. Once you forget yourself, there's nothing left to stop him from filling the space. Before I could speak, the man stood up. I wouldn't go back to that house, he said. But if you do, leave something behind. Something real. Something he can't imitate. Then he left. That night, I did the unthinkable. I went back. The house welcomed me with silence. No notes. No critics. No whispers. Until I opened the bedroom door. There, sitting cross-legged on my bed, was me. Except he was smiling. And I wasn't. He didn't move. He just sat there on my bed, in my clothes, with my face staring at me like I was the intruder, like I was the imposter. "Don't," I said, my voice shaking. "Don't do this." He smiled wider. "You left me." Again, the words felt heavy, not angry, disappointed, like I had broken a promise I didn't remember making. "I didn't know," I whispered. He tilted his head. "But I did. I remembered for both of us." I backed into the hall, reaching for the knife I'd tucked into my belt. "I don't care who you think you are," I said. "You're not me." He laughed. "Of course I'm not. Not yet." Then he lunged, but he didn't attack. He passed through me, cold, hollow, like inhaling smoke that had weight. I dropped to my knees, coughing, retching. My skin itched from the inside out. I clawed at my chest, at my face, trying to scrape him off, but there was nothing. Just the echo of his voice inside my skull. "There's not enough room for both of us." I crawled to the bathroom mirror. I still looked like me. Same scars, same bloodied hands, but something about the eyes was wrong. Too flat, too patient, and worse, when I whispered my name, it didn't sound familiar. I smashed the mirror again. Watched my reflection crack into 100 tiny strangers. Every shard grinned back. That night, I found one last note on the floor. "We are nearly won, but you can still win. You just have to remember what you buried." That sent me spiraling. What did I bury? What was I forgetting? I tore through the attic, through every box of old journals, photo albums, school books. Nothing felt real. I didn't recognize my own handwriting in half of them. Some photos had my face, but others didn't. One box held a single object, a shoebox, sealed with duct tape and scribbled on a marker. "Do not open. Ever." No memory of writing it. But I opened it. Inside was a Polaroid, a crawl space, and a small child sitting beside it. The child was me. But the thing in the background, peering from the dark, arms too long, grin too wide, wasn't. On the back of the photo, in a child's handwriting, he said if I gave him my name, he'd be my friend forever. I dropped the photo like it burned me. But it all came back, like a dam cracking open. I remember now, the voice from under the floor, the friend who whispered to me at night when I was too scared to sleep. How I used to lie there, whispering secrets into the vent under my bed. Games, fears, my full name. He told me names were powerful, that sharing mine made me his. I thought it was pretend, but now I knew better. I stumbled downstairs, my breath ragged, everything spinning. The house pulsed around me like it was breathing. Floorboards groaning, lights dimming. I grabbed a marker and began writing my name, my full, real name, on the walls. Over and over, because I understood now. He couldn't take it if I owned it. I had to claim it again. But every time I wrote it, something erased it. Not smudged, gone. The ink vanished from the wall the moment I looked away. And behind me, a whisper. Too late. I turned, and there he was. Me, but not. Eyes hollow, stretched too wide. Joints popping as he stepped forward. My doppelganger, but rotting. He smiled. "I've been patient," he said. "You kept the house warm for me." "You're not me," I growled. "No," he said. "I'm what you left behind." He lunged. I ran, burst through the back door and into the woods behind the house. Moonlight filtering through the trees. The smell of moss and decay in memory. Branches slashed at my face, but I didn't stop until I reached the old creek bed, where the rocks formed a circle, where we used to play. I stood in the center and screamed my name into the night, louder than I ever had. "I am redacted," and something shifted. The woods held their breath. Then came the scream from the thing chasing me. Animalistic, furious, a shriek that echoed across the trees and curdled the air. When I looked back, he was stumbling, melting, like the name had scalded him. I kept yelling it, over and over, until he crumbled into the leaves. Gone. Silence fell. I collapsed there, panting, alone beneath the stars. But in that silence, a single note fluttered down from the trees, aged and yellow. Names are powerful, but not permanent. I burned the note, sat by the creek until sunrise, heart hammering in my throat, waiting for something to crawl out of the woods. But nothing came, just the sounds of birds and the slow warmth of light returning to the earth. Back at the house, the crawl space hatch was closed. I locked it with chains, bolted it, sealed the seams with cement. Every vent, Every floorboard crack, every crevice where a whisper might slip through, I filled them. I thought it was over. It felt over. For a while. But then came the little slips. I'd find objects in places I hadn't left them. Shoes turned the wrong way. My toothbrush dry even though I just used it. The login on my laptop showed activity at hours I was asleep. Worse, when I looked into mirrors, I had to think for a second before I recognized myself. My handwriting changed subtly. Kavya. Sharper. Words misspelled like he used to do in his notes. I went to the doctor. I begged for scans, tests, anything. Clean bill of health. So I started testing myself again. Daily affirmations. My name is redacted. I am me. I remember my face. My childhood. My voice. But the longer I spoke the words, the more they felt borrowed. Then the humming came back. Soft at first. From the walls. Then from inside my pillow. My bones. He hadn't died. He had just dug deeper. And the dreams returned, different now. I wasn't watching him. He was inside me, wearing me like a coat, walking through my memories, rearranging the furniture of my mind. I'd wake with scratches on my arms, my mouth sore, dirt under my nails I couldn't explain. And last week, I found a new note on my ceiling. It's so comfortable in here. I don't know what's real anymore. I think he's teaching me how to forget again. It's working. Yesterday, I couldn't remember the name of my first pet. Today, I forgot my mother's birthday. Tomorrow, it might be my own name. I've taken to writing it on my arms, on the walls, on my skin. Because if I forget it, if he erases it, then the crawl space will finally open wide, and no one will be left to close it again. If you're reading this, write your name down. Right now. Say it out loud. Own it. Because he's looking for you, too. He crawls through places people forget. Vents, pipes, dreams, grief. He finds the cracks and slithers in. And if you ever whispered your name into the dark when you were young, he already knows you. I can't fight him anymore. I don't know who I am, but I know who he is, and he's wearing my face. Story 8. The static man watches through the TV. Reddit username. Signal Slipper 88. It started with the old television. I found it in my dad's attic after he passed, buried beneath broken VCRs and stacks of dusty National Geographics. An old Zenith console TV, wood-paneled, curved screen, knob stiff with age. The kind that weighs 1,000 pounds and hums like it's holding a grudge. I don't know why I took it home. Nostalgia, maybe. Or maybe I just missed him. The house felt too quiet without his crackling radio or the clatter of his late-night TV marathons. I set it up in my basement, plugged it in despite the busted cord. I expected sparks, or at best, nothing. Instead, it turned on. No channels, of course. Just static. Thick, noisy snow. But there was something strange about the way it moved. The patterns didn't flutter randomly. They shifted with purpose. Like waves. Like breathing. I told myself it was an illusion. Just old wiring, ghost signals, leftover radiation. Until I saw him. It happened 3 nights later. I was sitting on the couch, absent-mindedly watching the fuzz, drinking a warm beer, half asleep. Then something in the static shifted. A silhouette. Tall. Thin. Motionless. Hidden in the white noise like a shape behind frosted glass. I leaned in, and his head turned. Slow. Deliberate. Right toward me. I scrambled back, heart hammering, beer bottle shattering on the floor. But when I looked again, the figure was gone. Just snow. Just static. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I blinked, I saw the outline of his head turning. The suggestion of eyes behind the buzz. I told myself it was a trick of the light. My brain misfiring. Grief hallucinations. I tried to move on. But the next night, I woke up to the TV on, even though I'd unplugged it. The static was louder now. Sharper. And in the middle of the screen, clear as day, were 3 words written in the snow. I see you. I stood frozen at the basement steps, barefoot, shivering. The static hissed louder than it had any right to, filling the room, vibrating the walls. The words lingered on the screen for another 5 seconds before they dissolved back into the snow. I flipped the circuit breaker for the basement. Didn't matter. The screen kept glowing. I yanked the plug from the socket. Again, pointless. The TV was not plugged in, but it hummed like a living thing, like it fed off attention. I grabbed a blanket and slept in my car. The next morning, the TV was dark. Dead. cold to the touch. For a few days, I convinced myself it had been a grief episode, maybe sleep paralysis. My therapist had warned me this might happen. Trauma surfaces in strange ways, she'd said. But then I found the photo, wedged under my front door like junk mail. It was an old Polaroid, faded, scratched. It showed my basement couch, and me, sleeping, the TV behind me on. A figure standing next to it, tall and thin, with a static-covered head. No face, just a fuzzing blur, like the signal was trying to hide him. There was writing on the back in shaky block letters. "You look peaceful when you're off." I checked the locks. All secure. Windows, too. But the fact remained, someone had taken that photo. While I was asleep, I tried throwing the TV out, hauled it to the curb. It was heavier than I remembered, like it didn't want to go. But that night, it was back in the basement, right where it had been. The cord still severed, still humming, still watching. I called my cousin, a tech guy, skeptical, logical. He brought gear to test it. EMF detectors, voltmeters, a thermal camera. We set everything up and recorded overnight. The next morning, he was pale. "I don't know how to explain this," he said, "but at 3:17 a.m., your body temp dropped 15 degrees. For 12 minutes. No pulse, no breath." He showed me the footage. At 3:17 a.m. I sat straight up on the couch, eyes open, but I wasn't awake. And from the TV, the static flowed outward like smoke. Like hands. I didn't remember any of it. Not the sitting up, not the freezing cold, not the thick, coiling static that slid across the carpet and curled around my feet like vines made of television snow. But the footage didn't lie. My cousin backed out that same morning. Said he'd seen enough weird shit for one lifetime and that I should burn the damn thing. But when I asked him to help me do it, he shook his head. "It wants to be seen," he muttered. "If you try to destroy it, it'll only get closer." I didn't understand what he meant. Until that night, I stayed upstairs, triple locked the basement door, put on music to drown out the humming that somehow reached me through the ceiling. Still, I couldn't sleep. At exactly 3:17 a.m., every screen in the house flickered on. My phone, my TV, my microwave, my smartwatch, all displaying the same message. "Tune in." Then one by one they shut off. Except the basement TV. I could hear it down there, louder than before. Not just static now, but voices. Dozens. All whispering at once. Some weeping. Some laughing. Some calling my name. I crept to the door, pressed my ear against the wood. It felt warm. And behind it, footsteps. Slow. Dragging. Coming up the stairs. I backed away, heart racing. The doorknob rattled, turned but didn't open. A pause. Then a new sound, a wet, fleshy knock. Like a forehead gently tapping the door from the other side. Then the whisper. "I remember when you used to watch me." I bolted out the front door, didn't stop running until I was 3 blocks away. When I came back at dawn, the basement was silent. But the TV had moved. Now it sat at the top of the stairs, screen cracked, humming softly. And etched into the wood floor beneath, it were 4 words burned in deep. "I'm almost through." I covered the TV with a thick tarp, duct taped it shut, and dragged it into the shed behind the house. Locked the shed with a padlock. Then I drove 30 miles away to stay with a friend. But that night, 3:17 a.m. again, I woke up on his couch, sitting upright, staring at the blank television across the room. The static wasn't on, but I could hear it inside my head, like a buzzing migraine pressed behind my eyes. Then came the voice, low and crackling. "I miss your eyes." I screamed. Woke my friend. He tried to calm me, said I was dreaming, maybe sleepwalking. But the next morning, I found static burn marks on the palms of my hands, tiny white blisters shaped like fingerprints. I drove home. The shed door was open. Padlock snapped clean in 2. Inside, the tarp lay crumpled in the corner. The TV was gone. I found it in the living room, waiting for me. Screen powered on, humming softly. It didn't say anything that night. Just played images, brief flashes from my past. My father in his chair, head slumped. Me as a child, staring at cartoons, unmoving. My own face at 3:17 a.m., mouth slightly open, eyes blank. Then it showed something new, something that hadn't happened yet. Me, standing in the basement, alone, lights flickering. The The static man behind me, one hand on my shoulder, the other sliding up the back of my neck. I shut it off, but that image is burned in my memory now, like it was branded there. I tried to contact a local paranormal investigator. She agreed to come by, said she'd seen haunted tech before. Usually just echoes, she said. Residual energy. She lasted 5 minutes in the house, ran out the door, and vomited in the yard. When she caught her breath, she looked at me with dead serious eyes and said, "That's not an echo. That's a live signal." Then she got in her car and left. That night, I slept in the bathtub. At 3:17 a.m., the lights flickered, and through the running water, I saw his reflection, standing in the mirror above the sink. Tall, head buzzing with static, and his mouth moved. It's almost time to switch channels. I left the water running and ran barefoot into the street. Didn't grab my phone, didn't lock the door. I just kept running until my lungs burned and my vision blurred. I stayed in a 24-hour diner until sunrise, sipping coffee and trying not to blink. Because every time I closed my eyes, I felt them behind them, whispers brushing against my thoughts like radio static too faint to fully hear. When I finally returned home, the TV was back in the basement. It screened black, but something was playing behind the glass. Not just reflections, footage of me doing things I hadn't done yet. In one clip, I stood at the kitchen sink, carving something into my arm with a fork. In another, I sat in the basement, grinning, whispering SHHH to the screen while blood pooled at my feet. And in the last one, I was lying in a coffin, eyes open, mouth smiling, screen flickering inside the casket. I unplugged the TV again, smashed the power knob off with a hammer. Didn't stop there. I dragged the damn thing to the backyard, doused it in lighter fluid, and set it on fire. It screamed, not loudly, not in sound, but something deep inside me shrieked as the flames ate through the glass. The fire danced weird, like it was trying to spell something in smoke. When it was nothing but melted plastic and scorched wires, I finally breathed. But I should have known. The next night, my phone turned on at 3:17 a.m. No notification. No up. Just static. And in the middle of the screen, a blurry shape forming. I threw the phone out the window. In the morning, I heard the mail slot click open. A VHS tape slid through onto the floor, written in black ink on the label. Season finale. I don't own a VCR. I left it there and went out for air. Walked past the shed, past the scorched earth where the TV used to sit. But the ground was cool. Too cool. And beneath the soil, I could hear humming. He's not in the TV anymore. He's in the signal, in the electricity, in me. That night, I found my mirror fogged over. Not from shower, from breathing. And when I wiped it clean, my reflection whispered, "We're live." I don't know how long I've been awake now. Time moves strange when he's near. My clocks blink the wrong hours. The sun rises too slowly. Shadows fall in directions they shouldn't. I stopped using screens. Phone's gone. Lato, my set. I even unscrewed the digital thermostat. But it's not enough. He doesn't need devices anymore. Last night, my eyes began to flicker. Just for a second, the whites turned grainy, like my pupils were tuned to the wrong frequency. I saw the world stutter, frame by frame, and caught glimpses between a hallway that didn't exist, a wall that pulsed like skin, and the static man's silhouette waiting, arms spread wide. I blinked, and it was gone, but I felt him smile. I started hearing voices that weren't mine, thinking thoughts I didn't recognize. When I touched a doorknob, I saw a flash of someone else's life. A girl in a hospital bed, static leaking from the EKG. When I drank water, it tasted like dust and electricity. He's tuning me, aligning me with his channel. I found another VHS today. It wasn't mailed. It was inside the fridge, wrapped in meat paper. This time, it had no label. I smashed it before temptation could win. But I know I'll find another tomorrow. They're everywhere now. My dreams have become commercials for lives I've never lived. Every time I close my eyes, I'm selling something to a crowd with no faces. The static man stands behind the camera, nodding, mouthing the words with me. And in the distance, a countdown always ticks. Faint, steady. It ends at 3:17. Tonight, I made a decision. If he's going to replace me, I won't make it easy. I carved my name into the basement wall, over and over. Every inch of the foundation now screams me. I bit my tongue until it bled, mixed it with paint, and marked the floor in symbols I half remember from childhood, a protective sigil I once saw on a cartoon. If I'm going to lose myself, I want to leave a trail. Something someone else can follow. Something human. Because once he finishes tuning me, the broadcast won't stop. And you might be next. I try to record a video today to document everything before I forget who I am. But the camera wouldn't focus. Every time I hit record, the screen twisted, glitched. My face fractured into pieces, then rearranged into someone else's. Someone smiling, with black gums and hollow eyes that shimmered like dying pixels. So I gave up. I've started writing everything by hand now. Journals, note cards, walls my own skin. It's all I can do to hold on. But it's not working. Last night, I caught myself standing in front of the microwave at 3:17 a.m., mouth open, static pouring out my throat. I wasn't dreaming. I was transmitting. I woke up with a nosebleed and a torn fingernail. And when I turned around, there was a new VHS waiting for me on the floor. I didn't touch it. I buried it outside under the oak tree. It was back inside the house an hour later, placed neatly on my pillow. This time, the label just read, "You're almost ready. The static has changed now. It's inside everything. My heartbeat, my breath, my reflection doesn't blink unless I concentrate hard enough. And even then, it lags. Sometimes I catch it still staring at me after I've walked away." I saw the static man again in the hallway mirror. He wasn't behind me. He was me, wearing my body like a cheap Halloween costume, too tight in some places, sagging in others. When I raised my hand, he waved with the other. Mirrored but wrong. The house is filled with whispers now. My voice, copied and warped, bouncing between the walls. He's rehearsing, practicing, learning how to be me. And tonight? Tonight is the season finale. I don't know what that means, but I feel it. A pressure in the air, like thunder waiting to strike. The house groans with it. The floorboards creak in patterns. The refrigerator hums in Morse code. And at 3:17 a.m., I think I'm going to change channels for good. If that happens, if I disappear, please, smash your TV. Never trust a blank screen. And if you ever see static where there shouldn't be any, don't look directly into it, because he'll look back. It's 3:17 a.m. The TV's on, even though there's no TV anymore. Just light, burning white, pulsing in time with my breath. I feel him behind my eyes now, flipping through my memories like channels. He's found one he likes. He's wearing my voice. If you're reading this, don't answer the screen when it calls your name. Don't follow the static. Don't tune in. He only needs one more viewer. Story 9. My house only exists at night. Reddit username. I signed the lease because it was dirt cheap and I was desperate. The landlord was odd. He met me in the parking lot just after sunset and didn't step 1 foot past the threshold. His hand trembled when I signed the papers. "It's yours from dusk till dawn," he said. "Just remember, don't try to find it during the day." I thought he was joking, or senile, or maybe he was just warning me about how the neighborhood was sketchy. But on my first morning there, I got out early to run errands. I came back around noon and stood at the address on the contract, 425 Larchmont Street. And there was nothing there, just a vacant lot, chain link fence, patches of gravel and weeds. No mailbox, no front porch, no outline in the dirt, just absence. I walked the whole block 3 times before leaving, convinced I'd made a mistake. But when I returned later that night, around 8:15, the house was there. Exactly as I remembered it. 2 stories, slanted roof, yellow door, a porch swing still swaying from the breeze. It even smelled like the inside of an old couch. My key worked perfectly. I didn't sleep that night. I kept checking the windows, afraid it would all vanish while I blinked. The next morning, I tested it again. 8 a.m., house still there. 8:10, still there. But at 8:17, as I watched from across the street, it began to flicker. Not slowly, not like a mirage. It stuttered like bad footage, then folded into itself. Roof, walls, light, gone in less than 3 seconds. Just a vacant lot again. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? I kept a journal. Started documenting every night. And the more I stayed there, the more I noticed rules. I couldn't bring people over. I tried once. A coworker dropped me off after a night out. As soon as she crossed the threshold, her nose started bleeding. She passed out cold on the floor. When she woke up outside 20 minutes later, she had no memory of the house or of me. But the house remembered her. There was a drawing on my kitchen wall the next morning. A charcoal sketch of her face, crying. Things escalated after that night. I started hearing footsteps above me when I was alone, always around 3 a.m., slow, deliberate pacing, back and forth across the upstairs hallway. But every time I checked, there was no one there, and the floorboards were cold, like they hadn't been touched in years. I set up a camera once, just my old phone, propped on a bookshelf, aimed at the stairs. I watched the feed live while pretending to sleep on the couch. At 2:58, nothing. Silence. At 3 o'clock, a faint hum. And then a figure appeared at the top of the stairs. Not walking, phasing in, like the air had been hiding it and just forgot. I couldn't move. The figure had no face. Just skin pulled taut over a skull with no features. It didn't look at the camera, it looked through it. Straight at me. Then the feed cut to black. The phone wouldn't turn on again. That night, I found a new door in the hallway. It hadn't been there before. Black wood, brass handle, carved letters that read, "No tres pasin." I didn't open it. I didn't sleep either. I started noticing things shifting when I wasn't looking. Furniture would be slightly off-center. My toothbrush would be wet when I hadn't used it. The fridge would be humming louder than it should, and once I swear I heard whispering inside it, like voices stuck between the shelves. I called the landlord. He answered immediately. "You opened the door, didn't you?" he asked. I didn't, I told him. "But it's there now." Long silence. "Then you only have a few nights left," he said. "Don't touch it. Don't knock. Don't even think about it. The house wants you to go inside." I asked what was behind the door. He didn't answer. Just said, "Sunrise is your friend. If you're ever trapped in a bad moment, run for the window. Let the light in." And then he hung up. I tried leaving before sundown that day. Packed a bag and drove toward a motel in the next town. But every road turned back toward 425 Larchmont. I drive 10 miles and find myself pulling into the same cracked driveway. The house wanted me back, and when I entered, the black door was open just a crack. I didn't open the door. I couldn't even bring myself to touch it. But that didn't stop it from changing me. That night, the dreams came. Thick, heavy things like oil poured over my mind. I dreamt of long, endless hallways beneath the house, lined with empty picture frames. Inside each one, a faint outline of someone screaming. I saw myself in one of them, mouth open, hands pressed against invisible glass. When I woke up, my hands were raw and red, like I'd been pounding on something all night. The house was colder than usual, too still, the kind of silence that isn't peaceful, just expectant, waiting. I found another door the next night. This one in the kitchen, hidden behind the pantry shelves. Same black wood, no handed, just a peephole, and behind it, breathing, shallow, vet. I covered it with a chair and didn't eat that night. At 3 a.m., all the lights in the house flickered once, and the peephole opened. Not the door, just a tiny hole, as if someone on the other side had moved their eye away, inviting me to look. I didn't, but I could feel it watching. I started losing track of time. One evening, I sat on the couch, blinked, and suddenly it was midnight. My coffee was cold. The fireplace had gone out, and there was a small object in my lap that hadn't been there before. A key, blackened metal, twisted like it had been bent in fire. I threw it into the trash, found it in my coat pocket the next morning. The landlord wouldn't return my calls anymore. The next night, I finally broke. I tried to stay awake until sunrise. Kept every light on. Chugged coffee, blared music. But I still woke up at 3:17 a.m. Sitting upright in bed, hands folded in my lap, the black key between them. And the closet door was wide open, even though I'd nailed it shut the week before. Inside wasn't clothing. It was stairs, going down, flickering candlelight below, and scrawled across the top step in chalk. "You're already inside." I didn't want to go down, but the house wanted me to. The walls around the staircase pulsed like lungs holding breath. I could hear the creak of distant floorboards, but not above me. Below, far below, like there was another house buried under this one, unfolding downward. I closed the closet door, hammered the nails back in, taped over the frame, dragged my dresser in front of it. Then I sat in the hallway with the lights on and stared at the black door for hours, waiting to see if it would move again. At 3 a.m., the temperature dropped. Fast. My breath came out in white plumes, even though it was midsummer. I could hear the fridge compressor sputtering. The walls groaned. And then the black door slowly swung open. No sound, no gust of air, just a slow, deliberate swing until it stood wide, revealing nothing but shadow behind it. But this time, I saw something in there. A figure, crouched low, too thin, its joints bending the wrong way. Its head twitched once, like it had heard something. I slammed the door and ran outside barefoot, waiting for dawn in the street. When the sun rose, the house was gone again. Vacant lot, but my footprints were still on the dirt. The key was still in my pocket. I didn't return for 2 nights. Stayed in a motel. Slept during the day. Tried to forget. But dreams followed me. Dreams of that thing in the closet, crawling across the ceiling, whispering nonsense syllables into my ear. Words I didn't recognize, but somehow understood. When I returned to the house, just after dusk, I found scratches on the ceiling. Long, deliberate gouges. And a phrase written in what looked like ash across the living room wall. You can't leave what's under you. I packed my bags. I tried again to leave town. Didn't work. The road changed behind me. Gypsy spoon in Chirkles. The gas station I stopped at had no employees, no doors, just static on the pumps and my own name scrolling across the LED price sign. I made it back to the house at exactly 8:17 p.m. and found a third door. This one on the ceiling of the upstairs hallway. A square hatch with no ladder. Written in white paint across the wood. Open me last. I've lived in this house for 3 months now. Or maybe it's been 3 years. Time's starting to bend in strange ways. Some nights feel like hours, others like minutes. And sometimes I wake up and it's still dark outside, even though the clock says noon. The sun doesn't always rise for me anymore. I tried breaking the rules. I opened the basement door again. I walked halfway down the staircase that wasn't supposed to be there. The air got thick. My ears filled with pressure. The lights above flickered like they were trying to warn me off. But what scared me the most was the whistling. High and slow, like someone down there was imitating a tune but didn't know how it was supposed to end. I turned back. When I got upstairs, the house was different. The furniture had changed places. My bed was in the living room. The kitchen sink had filled with red water that shimmered like TV static. There were new windows, too, but they didn't show the outside. They showed me different versions. Sleeping, laughing, screaming, all wearing the same clothes I had on. In one of the windows, I was standing completely still while a second version of me crawled out of the closet behind him. That was enough. I boarded up every door I could find. Every new opening, every hatch, every crack. But then I noticed something I hadn't before. There's no front door anymore. Only a hallway that loops. Every time I walk it, the lights dim just a little more. And eventually, I find myself back at the start, standing in the living room, as if I'd never moved at all. The ceiling hatch creaked last night. I hadn't touched it, but it opened halfway on its own, and something fell out. A Polaroid photograph, curling at the edges, still warm. It showed the living room. And me, face down, sprawled across the floor. My limbs twisted wrong. In the corner of the photo was something blurry, something watching me from the ceiling like a spider ready to drop. There was a note scribbled in the corner. You never left. I tried to burn it, but it wouldn't catch. Nothing in this house burns. Nothing in this house ends. Last night, the house spoke. Not with words, not with voices, but with memory. At 3 a.m., the walls began to breathe again, expanding, contracting, as though the house had lungs. I stood in the hallway, clutching a flashlight that kept dimming, watching the plaster pulse like flesh. Then the photographs appeared. One by one, they slid from the ceiling hatch and drifted to the floor like feathers. All Polaroids. All of me. But not from this house. Different versions. Different lives. One where I worked a night shift at a hospital. One where I had a daughter. One where I stood in a mirrorless bathroom, eyes hollow, holding that same black key. Each photo had a caption scrawled underneath in frantic handwriting. Too late. Still watching. Not your turn yet. The hallway stretched longer every time I turned my back to it. By the fourth pass, it was double in length. The lights began flickering in patterns. Morse code, I think, but I don't know how to read it. I recorded it anyway. Maybe someone else can decode the house's heartbeat. The scratching started after that. From inside the walls. Sometimes above me. Sometimes under the floorboards. I whispered, "Who's there?" The answer came back immediately, not from the walls, but from my mouth. "You." My reflection is no longer synced. I wave, it blinks. I speak, it watches. It doesn't mimic anymore, it studies. Like it's trying to remember how to be me. Trying to guess what I'll say next. And last night, I caught it smiling when I wasn't. The black door has started changing shape. Warping. Stretching taller. The knob gone. The words "no trespassing" now smeared as if they were once wet paint. Only now they drip upward instead of down. I hear voices from behind it. Not angry or urgent. Begging. They don't call my name. They call numbers. Times. Places I've never been. I woke up this morning with the ceiling hatch wide open again. More photos. But this time they weren't of me. They were of you. Reading this. Staring into your screen. Eyes wide. Mouth slightly open. And in the photo's corner, crouched behind your chair, was the thing I saw the first night the black door opened. I can't tell what's real anymore. The house folds in on itself, swallowing rooms whole. Hallways twist like rivers, and I find doors that lead nowhere but back to the same spot. I stop trying to leave. The black door opened fully last night. Inside, the hallway stretched into a void, endless and silent. I walked for what felt like hours, feet bare on cold concrete. At the end, a small room. Empty, save for a chair and a cracked mirror. I sat down. The reflection wasn't mine. It was the landlord. His eyes dark pits. He smiled, crooked and sad. Whispered, "You don't get to leave." "Not yet." Then the mirror cracked. Splinters of glass fell like rain, and the room collapsed. I woke up in my bed, or what I thought was my bed. The walls were closer, the air thicker, the light dimmer. The black key was in my hand, and the words written on the wall, they'd changed. Now they read, "Open me last." I'm afraid to, but I know I have to, because if I don't, he'll open it for me, and I won't get a choice. The hatch creaked, opened slowly. Cold air rushed out, like the house exhaling after holding its breath for centuries. I climbed up, heart pounding. Inside was nothing but darkness, and a whisper, "Welcome home." I stepped in, and everything went black. If you're reading this, remember, some houses only exist at night, and once you're inside, the sun may never find you again. Story 10. They live in the walls. Reddit username. I moved into my new apartment last month. It's cheap, small, and, most importantly, available on short notice. Perfect for a fresh start after a messy breakup and a job transfer. But from day one, there was something off. Not about the building itself. It looks normal enough. Brick walls, creaky floors, the usual neighborhood noise. But inside my apartment, I swear I can hear whispering. Not the kind that comes from neighbors or the street. The whispers come from the walls. At first, I thought it was pipes or the heating system. But the sounds don't follow any logical pattern. They're too rhythmic, too deliberate. Sometimes the whispers form words. Sometimes they sound like faint laughter. I started taping my walls, literally putting a microphone up and recording during the quiet hours. When I played it back, I could make out voices saying things like, "Stay with us. Don't go. They'll come." I laughed it off. Probably the building settling. Old wiring. Or maybe I was just lonely. But last night, the whispers stopped, and a new sound started. Scratching. Slow. Right behind the drywall. I knocked on the wall. No response. Then the scratching turned to tapping, almost like knocking. I pressed my ear to the wall and heard a voice, my own, whispering back. Only it wasn't me. It was something else. Something trapped. Something waiting. I couldn't sleep after that. The tapping continued all night, growing louder and more urgent. Every time I pressed my ear to the wall, I heard the same faint whisper. "Help me." I tore a small section of drywall off to see if I could find the source. Behind it, there was nothing but insulation and pipes. No cavity, no crawl space, nothing. But the sound wasn't coming from any physical space. It was inside the wall itself. I tried to call my landlord, but he didn't answer. I asked my neighbors if they'd heard anything strange. They looked at me like I was crazy. "Nope," said the lady down the hall. "This building's been quiet for decades." I bought a baby monitor and placed it on the floor, pointed at the walls. When I listened back the next day, I heard something terrifying. Not just voices, but footsteps. Slow, heavy, dragging, coming closer, 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 and then the monitor went dead. The whisper returned, louder than before. "Let me out. I'm starting to think the walls are alive. And they're hungry." That night, I stayed up, staring at the walls. I'm convinced something is moving inside them. I could hear faint scratching and the soft sound of breathing. It wasn't just one voice anymore. There were many. Whispers overlapping, chanting in an indecipherable language. I tried recording again, but my phone glitched. The recordings played backwards, filled with static, distorted voices, screaming in reverse. At 3:17 a.m., the scratching stopped. Silence. Then a knock. Not from the walls, but from inside my closet. I froze. Slowly, the closet door creaked open just a crack. A cold wind spilled out, and I saw a pair of eyes. Dark, unblinking. Watching. Waiting. I slammed the door shut and locked it. But I don't know if that's enough. They're inside the walls. Inside the house. Maybe even inside me. I don't know how much longer I can hold on. Because tonight, the whispers are louder. And they're calling my name. The next day, I contacted a local contractor to inspect the walls. I told him about the noises and the voices. He laughed. "Squirrels? Rats," he joked. But after opening up a section of drywall, his face changed. Behind the wall, there was a narrow cavity I hadn't been able to detect before. Inside, scrawled in dirt on the plaster, were words. "They watch. They wait." The contractor looked uneasy and recommended I move out immediately. But I couldn't. Not yet. I started seeing shadows in my peripheral vision. Faint figures moving just beyond the corners of my eyes. When I turned, nothing. But the feeling didn't go away. Last night, the scratching turned into tapping. Tapping turned into pounding. Pounding turned into screaming. I covered my ears, but I could still hear it. And then my walls started to sweat. Little droplets of clear, liquid rolling down. I wiped one up and tasted it. Salt. Tears. And something else. Metal. I'm running out of time. They don't want me to leave. They want me. I don't know how to explain what's happening. Last night, the pounding became rhythmic, like a heartbeat. The walls seemed to pulse in time with it. I tried to record again, but every device failed. Phones died. Batteries drained. Even my watch stopped ticking. I'm starting to think these things inside the walls can control electricity. Control time. I heard a voice that wasn't mine, whispering from every corner. "Come join us." I swear I felt something brush against my skin. A cold hand that left frostbite on my wrist. I tried to sleep in the bathtub, wrap myself in blankets, but the whispers followed me. In my dreams, I'm trapped inside the walls, lost in endless tunnels lined with faces pressed into the plaster. Their mouths moving, mouths sewn shut, mouths begging for release. I woke up gasping, covered in sweat. The scratching has returned. Closer now, right behind the wall beside my bed. I am scared. I'm so scared. If anyone finds this, don't ignore the walls. They're listening, and they're waiting. I've been running out of options. Last night, the pounding turned into a loud knock. 3 sharp hits, then 2, then 1. Like a code. I tapped back. Once, twice, 3 times. The knocking stopped. Then came a scraping sound. Slow, relentless. Right outside my bedroom door. I grabbed a crowbar and stood ready. The door rattled but didn't open. Then the whispering started again. Clear this time. Open the door. I refused. But then my reflection in the mirror smiled. It wasn't me. It wasn't human. Its eyes were black holes, swirling with static. It mouthed words without sound. Listen. I smashed the mirror with the crowbar. Shards sprayed everywhere. But the whispering didn't stop. Instead, it spread. From the walls. From the floor. From the ceiling. I'm writing this now because I don't know what else to do. They live in the walls. They want me. And I'm not sure how much longer I can keep them out. The night feels endless. I'm barricaded in my bedroom, every door and window sealed with whatever I could find, duct tape, furniture, even clothes. But the scratching and pounding never stop. I'm convinced the walls are alive, breathing, watching. I try calling a friend. No answer. My phone is dead. I can't even turn on the lights anymore. They flicker and die seconds after I flip the switch. The whispers grew louder today. Not just words anymore. Now they're singing. A lullaby. Cold and beautiful, but utterly wrong. I feel like I'm falling apart. Pieces of myself slipping away through the cracks. And when I look in the mirror, my reflection doesn't move with me. It watches, waiting. Last night, I dreamed of a door. A small wooden door inside the wall, with a lock, rusty, and a note hanging from the handle. Open if you dare. I don't know if I want to open it, but I think I have no choice, because they're already inside. I found the door behind my dresser. The lock was old, but I had a key, a small silver one taped under my desk. I turned it. The door creaked open. Darkness swallowed me whole. The whispers stopped, and then silence. I stepped inside. No walls, no floors, just endless shadows. And waiting. If you hear knocking in your walls, don't answer. They don't want to help. They want you.